Hey there, night wanderer. Before we begin tonight's story, take a moment to get comfortable. Maybe you're in bed or curled up on the couch with a warm blanket. Wherever you are, let the rain outside soothe your thoughts and slow your breath. If you enjoy this quiet corner of the internet, feel free to like the video, and I'd love to know. What time are you listening to this? Drop it in the comments. Are you an early dreamer or a true midnight soul? All right, close your eyes, settle in, and let the story begin. I stayed the winter at Ashmere House because there was nowhere else to go. My life had folded in on itself by October, slowly at first, like paper softening in water. Then, all at once, the breakup, the job falling through, the death of someone I had loved once. Though I hadn't said the words in time, it all came in silence. No crash, no climax, just a long, breathless sigh. I didn't want company. I didn't want kindness. I wanted stillness. A season alone. That's when I found the listing. Caretaker sought remote estate. Winter months only. Must be comfortable with isolation. Must not mind fog. The ad didn't mention where it was, but the email I received after applying was brief. Ashmere House, North Ridge Pass, November through March. You'll be alone. That's the point. They didn't ask for a resume, just my name. I gave it, though something about that felt important. The stipend was generous. I said yes. It took nearly 9 hours of driving to get there. The final stretch, a narrow trail of cracked asphalt climbing into a cloud-choked forest. The trees, thick with rot and lichen. I kept expecting the house to rise ahead of me like something out of a story, but it didn't. It was just there. A slow reveal around a corner, no gates, no sign, no ceremony. Ashmere House, built from slate and timber, covered in moss, 3 stories high, with long windows that looked like they were meant for watching, not letting in light. No cars in the gravel drive, no footprints in the snow. The key had been mailed to me. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house smelled like time. Dust and cedar, cold iron, dampness sunk into the wood. My boots clicked softly against the dark floorboards as I moved through the foyer. Everything was old, but strangely untouched chairs without wear, books without dust, blankets folded precisely at the corners of each bed. It was like someone had cleaned it moments before I arrived. But the air said otherwise. The ground floor was simple: a kitchen, a library, a parlor with a cold fireplace. Upstairs, the bedrooms, each one similar, though only one had sheets turned down, as if inviting me to sleep. Mine, I guessed. There was no Wi-Fi, no cell signal, just a rotary phone in the hallway, with no dial tone. I unpacked nothing that night. Instead, I sat at the window and watched the fog drift through the trees like it was looking for something. The silence was deep, not peaceful, just endless. And before I slept, I found a journal in the desk drawer. First page blank. Only one sentence at the top. Write only what you remember, not what you know. The first week passed like mist. Each morning I made coffee on the gas stove, walked the halls, checked the boiler. The heat worked surprisingly well. The lights flickered occasionally, but held steady. Nothing moved in the woods. Nothing called or creaked in the night. But I always felt not alone, not watched, just followed, somehow by my own thoughts, maybe echoes, or the house itself. On the 8th night, I found a staircase I hadn't noticed, tucked behind a narrow door near the back of the kitchen. Old wood, steep steps, no handrail. It led down to a root-cellar stone walls and low beams, shelves lined with empty jars, a broken chair in one corner, and a single bare light bulb that pulsed like a heartbeat. When I turned to leave, the stairs were longer, just by a step or two. Back upstairs, I wrote in the journal, "Today the cellar moved." Then I scratched it out. Instead, I wrote, "Fog heavier, light bulb flickering, safe words." Words that couldn't follow me back up. I began to forget little things. Where I'd left my gloves, whether I'd locked the cellar door, the taste of coffee, the exact color of my sister's hair. Nothing dramatic, just smudges, smears on the glass of memory. And the more I forgot, the more comfortable the house became. The paintings changed. I didn't notice at first, but one morning I paused at a landscape in the parlor gray hills and fog, bleak but ordinary. The next day, a figure stood in the fog, small, far away. The day after that, it had turned to face the viewer. There are no clocks in Ashmere, only windows. And even those show the same sky day or night, it stays gray. The same weightless clouds, the same still trees. Time here doesn't pass. It pools. Some nights, the house settles too slowly. The creaks don't come from the wood. They come from the walls themselves, like breath held too long. Sometimes I hear my name in the pipes, not spoken, just remembered. I'm not afraid. Not exactly. But I'm beginning to wonder, if I leave in spring, what part of me will stay, and what part has already gone. I stopped using the journal after the 10th entry, not because I didn't need it, but because the words started changing. They weren't mine. Not exactly. I'd return to the desk to find new lines beneath the ones I'd written, scrawled in my own handwriting, but off somehow, letters crooked, punctuation missing, always written in past tense, as if recalling events I hadn't yet experienced. One note read, "The parlor window opened last night. Something came in." I hadn't opened the window, but when I checked, the lock was undone, and the carpet beneath it was wet. The fog never lifted. It thickened some days, a choking blanket that pressed against the windows like a curious animal. Other days it thinned, allowing the outlines of distant trees to sharpen, but never enough to reveal the horizon. I could no longer remember what the sky looked like before I came. The house grew larger. I mean this literally. I began to notice hallways that curved when they hadn't before. A storage closet now led to a narrow corridor with a single frosted window. The third-floor attic, which I was sure I had explored on my first week, now had a second stairwell leading down into a wing I didn't recognize. Sometimes, doors wouldn't open. Other times, they opened too easily. Once, I entered what I thought was the second guest bedroom and found the library behind it, not a second copy of it, but the very same room. Same books left half pulled, same cracked globe in the corner. The light on the desk was still warm. I began leaving small objects around the house to mark reality. A stone on a windowsill, a fork wedged into a drawer, my scarf hung over the banister. They always disappeared. Sometimes they came back in different rooms, or days later, wet with fog or brittle with cold. I found the scarf one morning draped over a portrait in the upstairs hall. The subject in the painting now wore the same scarf. My reflection no longer matched me. Not in any dramatic way. Not at first. But I noticed the lag. My movements took a fraction too long to mirror. And sometimes, when I blinked, it didn't. Just stared. I tried opening the windows once, to let air in. They wouldn't budge. Even the ones I knew opened. Their locks turned fine, but the panes might as well have been stone. No sound passed through them. Not birdsong. Not wind. The outside wasn't just hidden. It was absent. I began sleeping downstairs. Something about the upstairs hall unsettled me. A smell, maybe, or a pressure behind the walls. The wallpaper had started to peel in long, curling strips. Underneath was something else. Not plaster. Something dark. Something fibrous. I didn't touch it again. One morning, I woke to find the kitchen entirely rearranged. Table against the opposite wall. Stove facing west. Utensils reorganized. Labels written in a language I didn't recognize. I stood there for nearly 10 minutes, trying to will it back into its proper shape. It didn't change. But when I returned after dusk, everything was normal again. Only the labels still weren't in English. A name came to me in a dream. Not my own. Adeline. I woke with the word in my mouth. It didn't feel spoken. It felt given. The next day, I found a book in the library with that name embossed in gold. Adeline Ashmere. No dates. Just a single inscription inside. Memory is the shape of survival. I no longer trust the mirrors. They show me too much. Not of myself, of the house. Corners I haven't entered. Rooms I don't recognize. Sometimes I see someone else in them. A shape, not always mine. Sometimes behind me. I lit a fire in the parlor on the 32nd day. Just for warmth. Just to feel something burn. But the smoke didn't rise. It curled against the ceiling, dense and unmoving, like it didn't want to leave. And the flame burned blue. That night, I walked the cellar again. The stairs were longer. The chair was gone. In its place, a circle of salt, fresh, untouched. And in the center, a scrap of paper with a single word written in dark red ink. Remember, I haven't seen my own handwriting in days. Only versions of it curled, cracked, too deliberate. Pages fill themselves. Chairs creak when I pass. Sometimes the house feels like it's leaning gently, like a breath at my back toward me, like it's listening or waiting. The fog has thickened again, so much now that the windows only reflect light. No view, no world, just me and the house, and the things that move in its memory. I started keeping notes on my body. Little things. A scratch on my palm, a hangnail, a bruise on my collarbone I couldn't remember getting, a new freckle just below my jawline. I'd sketch them in the margins of my journal, but each morning they'd move. The scratch would vanish, the freckle would shift, the bruise would fade from skin, but show up in the mirror, not a reflection of me exactly, but a version of me that was no longer synchronized. Ashmere doesn't show you things directly. It just waits for you to notice. I passed by the portrait on the landing one morning and froze. The woman's face, once serene, had thinned, her jaw sharper, her expression more knowing. I leaned closer. Her eyes followed. Not turned, not alive, just different, focused. And I noticed, for the first time, the faintest trace of condensation on the canvas, like something beneath the paint had been breathing. I moved through the house less during the day. Too many new rooms, too many wrong doors. One hallway, which used to end at the linen closet, now opened onto a spiral staircase. Stone steps, far older than the rest of the house. Cold, uneven. I descended 20 steps before realizing I couldn't feel the walls, couldn't hear my own footsteps. And when I turned to climb back up, the stairs were different, shallower, and the light behind me had changed. Back in the kitchen, the stove had reset itself again. It now faced north. Every window showed the same trees, same angle, same fog. I thought it was an illusion. Then, I threw a copper coin out of the pantry window. An hour later, I found it in the cupboard. Still damp, still cold. Sometimes, I sleepwalk now. I find myself standing in the library, the fire long dead, staring at a book I can't read. It's always the same book, bound in gray leather, no title. Each time, it's open to a different page, always blank, always damp. The whispers began 2 days ago. Not voices, more like syllables without shape. They hum along the walls, behind furniture, inside the vents, like wind being remembered. They rise when I write, and fall when I speak aloud. They hate speech. They prefer silence. I found a second journal tucked into the folds of the guest bedroom mattress. Same cover, same weight, but filled with entries I don't recall writing. Some written in the present tense, some in second person. You see her in the mirror again. She's closer now. The rooms behind the library are waking. You forgot again today. That was the point. The last entry simply read, "The house writes you back." Time folded after that. I began to experience my own days out of order. I'd wake to the fire already lit. I'd find meals prepared, half-eaten, but warm. Once, I turned a corner and caught a glimpse of myself just passing from the library to the hall, head low. I didn't follow. I was afraid I wouldn't find anything, or worse, that I would. Ashmere's dreams are not dreams. They are rooms. Some locked, some flooded, some with windows that look into moments I never lived. A woman humming in a red shawl, turning pages without touching them. A man sobbing into a pot of soil, whispering something in a language I almost understood. Once, I stood at a window, and watched myself bury something in the snow. A box, wrapped in ribbon. The ribbon looked wet. The attic is no longer empty. The first time I returned, I found a cradle. Old, rocking, though there was no breeze. Inside, a bundle of cloth, too heavy for its size. I didn't open it, but when I left, I could hear it breathing. I began hearing the name again. Adeline, carried in the creak of the stairs, scrawled on the walls behind peeling paint, spoken softly through the grates. When the heat kicks on, I whispered it to myself in the dark, not knowing why, and the house answered, a slow hum, wood expanding, a contented exhale. I found the photo again, the one I thought I'd lost. Only now, I was in it, clearly, standing beside the hearth, holding a book I haven't seen yet, smiling. Behind me, a woman in a gray dress, her hand on my shoulder, no face, just paint. The days no longer end when the sun goes down. There is no sun, just haze and the slow shift of temperature warmer near the center of the house, freezing at the walls, like it's trying to keep me in, like the outer rooms are closing off. I found the ribbon from the box in my coat pocket this morning, still wet. It smelled like snow and old roses. There was something carved into it, but the letters had soaked away. Only a shape remained. A circle, a keyhole, an eye. I think the house is filling itself with me, piece by piece. Every object I misplace reappears, changed like it has learned something. The scarf now smells of the fireplace. My boots have traces of mud from a trail I've never walked. The mirror no longer reflects the room behind me, it shows the hallway beyond, even when I shut the door. I am beginning to believe that Ashmere was never built. It was grown, fed by memory, watered with forgetting. Every thought I discard becomes a new stairwell. Every fear I ignore becomes another creak in the floor. It doesn't trap you. It absorbs you. And the more you try to leave, the more it learns how to keep you. The cellar door was open this morning. I never opened it. I haven't gone down in weeks. But there it was, yawning at the end of the hall, cold air crawling out like breath. I stood at the top of the stairs, holding the lantern. The air below smelled of soil and rust, and something faintly sweet like pressed flowers sealed into a coffin. The steps were deeper than I remembered. They always are. At the bottom, the walls had changed. No longer stone. Now they pulsed with faint light beneath a membrane of roots and damp paper. As if the walls had learned how to mimic though-told journals mashed into pulp, turned into skin. I ran my fingers along it. It felt warm, and it responded. A vibration, low and questioning, rolled through the room. I whispered my name. The wall vibrated louder. Not anymore, it seemed to say. There was a door I hadn't seen before. Smooth, black wood, no handle. A symbol carved at its center. The eye, the ribbon, the keyhole. I placed my palm over it. The door didn't open, but I remembered. Ashmere wasn't my first winter alone. I've been here before, not just once. Many times, different years, different faces, always in silence, always after something I wanted to forget, grief, Shame, a name I couldn't bear to speak aloud. I came to escape the noise, but the silence here was never empty. It was waiting. I remembered a letter, folded and placed in the guest bedroom desk drawer. Not sent, not even sealed, just waiting to be found. I returned to the room. The letter was there, unfolded now, addressed to Adeline Ashmere, 1874, and signed with my name. But that's not possible. I told myself that a dozen times. I told the mirror. I told the floor. I told the memory of my sister, who I now see walking the halls some nights, humming softly, her face a blur. But the house disagreed. The journal was full now, not with my handwriting, but with entries from others, all with my name. Different dates, different voices, same spiral. The house is a lung. We breathe in, it breathes out. I am its memory. It is my forgetting. I beg to be erased. It agreed. Every version of me is still here. I screamed once, loud, from the library, out the front windows, into the fog, and the house groaned back, not in anger, in recognition, like it hadn't heard that sound from me in a long time, like it had missed it. I've stopped seeing reflections. They've been replaced. Now when I look in glass, I see rooms, other rooms, older versions of the house, sometimes flooded, sometimes burning, sometimes filled with people I almost remember sitting at tables, eating meals, laughing without sound. And always, there's a space where I'm meant to sit. I found the box I buried, the one I'd seen in the vision. It was beneath the front steps, shallow grave, soil barely disturbed. Inside, pieces of myself. A ribbon I wore as a child. A photo with the face scratched off. Teeth. I don't know whose, but I knew they belonged here. I no longer trust the days. The sky cycles on a loop. Fog, haze, gray, fog again. Sometimes I wake to moonlight and realize it's been night for 3 days. The clocks are all blank now, even the ones I brought. Time is a decision the house no longer makes for me. I wandered the 3rd floor yesterday and found a hallway with no doors. Just portraits. Dozens of them. All me. Some older. Some younger. Some with smiles too wide. Some weeping. One with no mouth at all. I stopped at the last one. It was blank. Beneath it, a plaque. In progress. The door in the cellar opened last night. Not with a creak. With a breath. Inside, a mirror. Floor to ceiling. Covered in condensation. I stood before it. Waited. It cleared. And I saw not myself. Not even another version. But Ashmere. Not the house. The idea of it. A great black shape. Ribbed and shingled. Pulsing softly in fog. Dragging its memory like a cloak through time. It saw me. And it said not with a voice, but a knowing. You were never inside me. I was always inside you. I fell to my knees. Wept. Laughed. I don't know which. I was home. I'd always been home. I understood then what Ashmere was. Not a place, a container for sorrow too deep to say aloud, for thoughts too dark to carry, for people who didn't want to be remembered by the world but needed someone, something, to remember them anyway. It doesn't trap you. It welcomes you. And it never forgets, even when you ask it to. It's March now, I think. The calendar I brought with me is blank. The pages never flipped. No red circles, no ticked off days. Just blank squares, curling at the edges from the damp. I haven't marked time in weeks. I don't need to. Ashmere keeps its own clock a rhythm deeper than ours, quieter than breath. It keeps me now. I found a letter on the kitchen table this morning. Typed. Crisp. Too clean for this house. Dear applicant, thank you for your time at Ashmere House. Your seasonal term has concluded. You are released. Leave the key where it was found. Do not return. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I understood. It wasn't for me. It was for the next version of me, the one who'll arrive when the trees grow bare again. They'll find this letter too, and they'll think they're just staying the winter. The house doesn't change you. It reminds you who you are. Every version, every echo, every thought you buried. It builds you room by room until you can't tell where your body ends and the walls begin. And when it's finished, it doesn't let go. Not because it's cruel, but because it remembers. Sometimes, I think I'll walk out the front door, down the trail, back to the road. But when I open it, I only see fog and the faintest outline of myself, walking the path in reverse, duffel bag in hand, fresh hope in their heart. They won't make it far. Not really. The house is already inside them. I rarely speak aloud now. There's no one here to listen, but I don't feel lonely. Ashmere is always listening. In the tick of the pipes, in the slow creak of staircases, in the pages that turn themselves in the library books I never opened, books that hum with memory not mine, but somehow of me. It's like living in a diary I never wrote, and still, it knows what I meant to say. I caught my reflection yesterday, not in the mirror, in the window, briefly, before the fog swallowed it. I looked older, or maybe truer. My smile was soft, like someone who's finally stopped running. There's a new door in the west wing, just beyond the sitting room. I know what's behind it. A desk, a blank journal, a pen that never runs out, and a single sentence on the first page. Write only what you remember, not what you know. That's where I'll go next. Not to leave, to continue, to add my voice to the hum, to feed the roots with memory. Ashmere is not a house. It is the echo of all we try to erase. And when you come to it, carrying your silence like a suitcase, it welcomes you, and it keeps you, so that no sorrow is ever truly lost. If you find this in a drawer, or a loose floorboard, or beneath a pillow in the third bedroom, don't try to leave. Not because you can't, because by the time you want to, you're already part of it. Ashmere doesn't end when winter does. It only grows, and when the fog comes again, it will remember you. The notice said, last position open tunnel tech, station B12. low maintenance, minimal contact, full pay. It didn't say how far down the station was, or what exactly I'd be maintaining, but that was kind of the point. After I left my apartment, left her, really, and everything that came with it, I didn't want answers. I just wanted out. And this job, it came with a key card, a locker, and silence. The train that dropped me off didn't linger. It was a freight cart, jury-rigged to run once a week, down through a decommissioned tunnel line that used to run under the city in the 1970s. The new transit system ran overhead now. 12 was off-grid. A stub of nowhere left behind after they built the new. No passengers, no signal, no clocks, just a rusted door, a concrete stairwell, and my badge. 414, Grant L, contract duration, 6 weeks. Station B12 smelled like time that hadn't passed. Cold air, iron, damp dust, so fine it clung to skin. My boots echoed down a hallway lined with broken tiles and old signage, most of it too faded to read. A few flickering fluorescents hummed overhead, the sound thin and insect-like. At the far end was the control room. One chair, one terminal, 2 phones, neither connected to anything that rang. That was my post. 12-hour shifts, no visitors. My job was simple: log anomalies, run daily diagnostics, file audio reports into the archive. No decisions, no repairs, just witness. The first few days passed in a gray blur. I followed the logs. Each morning at 700, I scanned the structural feeds, grainy thermal maps of the walls, sound graphs of pressure and vibration, all automated. My only task was to make note of any deviations. There weren't any. At least, not then. The station had 3 levels. Level 1, operations and crew quarters. Level 2, the relay floor banks of dead equipment and old network panels no one touched anymore. Level 3, sealed. There was a 4th key on my ring, marked in red. It didn't open anything. Nights were the worst. Not because of fear, because of silence. True silence. The kind that pressed against your ribs and made your ears ring with your own heartbeat. I tried filling the space with sound old radio transmissions, music from my phone, but it never lasted long. Something about the walls ate noise, absorbed it, made it feel like I was the one humming. The journal helped. I'd jot things down after every shift, mostly routine temperature shifts, condensation patterns, flickering lights. But on day 5, I wrote something strange. Heard breathing behind the server racks tonight. Probably just airflow. Still felt wrong. I crossed it out the next morning. Nothing in B12 ever felt broken. But nothing ever felt used either. Chairs with no wear. Lights that never warmed. Consoles that powered on, but never booted anything. It was like stepping into a simulation of routine, something built not to function, but to imitate function. Like I was here to maintain the illusion of maintenance. One night, I woke up outside the control room. Not sleepwalking, just not remembering having walked there. My boots were wet, but the floors were dry. When I checked the log for that shift, It was already filled out, typed, not in my voice, but in my words. I told myself it was stress or burnout, but something deeper was curling around me, a kind of forgetting that felt intentional, like the station didn't want to hurt me. It wanted to keep me. I thought about quitting, but the next supply cart wasn't due for 5 weeks. And anyway, every time I thought about leaving, I got a splitting headache, right behind my eyes, like something was pushing back. I began marking time on the wall behind the console, 1 scratch per shift, just to prove to myself that time was moving, that I was still me. As of tonight, there are 14 marks, and I'm starting to wonder why the last 3 are smudged, like someone tried to wipe them clean. The smudged tally marks were gone this morning. Clean slate, not faded, scrubbed. The surface of the wall was rough where I'd carved them, but the scratches were filled in, painted over. Same paint as the rest of the room, same exact shade. I hadn't touched a brush. The air was thicker today, heavier. The moisture clung to the back of my neck. The walls looked darker, like they'd soaked something in. Not rain, there was no rain, no surface, just a sense that the underground was rising toward me, like I was getting closer to it, even though I hadn't moved. At 4:23 a.m., the station printer came online. It hadn't worked since I got here. No paper loaded, no cartridge, dust inside, but it hummed, clicked, and ejected a single page. Just a black square, nothing else. I touched the ink. It was warm. The sound logs began to loop. Each night, I reviewed the tunnel sensor's mics, spaced every 100 yards to capture pressure, movement, noise. First week, static, normal hum. Now, I hear breathing, not in the files beneath them. A low inhale every 18 seconds. Not mechanical, organic, and it's getting closer to the mic every night. I played the last night's recording back at half speed. There's a whisper between the breaths. Still down here. I didn't sleep that night. I've begun forgetting small things. The day of the week, the sequence of the keypads, the sound of my own voice when I speak aloud. I found a note in my locker today, written on the back of an equipment checklist. You're not new. My hands shook when I read it, because the handwriting was mine. I called up the archived log entries on the terminal. They stretch back over 20 years, all tagged with the same ID, 414. My number. I scrolled. Thousands of entries, all worded the same way I would phrase them. Some with phrases I've already written in the current log. Some I haven't written yet. There's a photograph in the file bin labeled "Retired Staff." I hadn't noticed it before. It shows a group of 7 workers, all in dark gray uniforms, standing in the tunnel. They're smiling. Middle of the photo, a man, pale, tall, tired eyes. His badge reads Grant L. Me, or someone who looks like me. Younger maybe, or older. I tried the 4th key again, the red one. This time, it clicked. The door it opened was tucked behind the relay room. A corridor lined with flickering lights. At the end, a stairwell. No label, no railing, just a downward pull in my gut. I didn't descend, but I stood there for a long time. The air rising from below smelled like static and earth, and something else, familiarity. The next day, my voice log was already submitted. I never recorded it, but the playback matched my tone exactly, word for word, except the ending. Grant L, Station Tech, 12. End of shift report. It's starting to remember me, and I think I've always been here. I check the mirror in the washroom now, every time I enter. It started lagging, not always, just sometimes. A 3-second delay. Once, I blinked. My reflection didn't. Instead, it smiled. I stopped marking the walls again. I've taken to carving the numbers into my arm. Just faint scratches. 1 per shift. The skin heals fast. Faster than it should. But at least it's mine. So far. I woke up yesterday with my boots still tied. I don't sleep with my boots on. There was a smear of something dark on the sole. I ran my fingers through it. Grease. Or ink. Or blood. No smell. Just warmth. Someone hummed outside the door last night. A low, tuneless melody. I pressed my ear to the metal. The humming stopped. Then a voice just on the other side. Next shift, please. I didn't open the door, but I left the light on. I wanted it to know I heard it. And maybe, somewhere deep down, I wanted it to hear me too. I opened the relay panel again. Not because I needed to, there was no scheduled maintenance, no alerts, but because the hum was different. Lower, hungrier. Inside, the wires pulsed, not blinked, pulsed with a rhythm too slow to be electrical. It reminded me of something I didn't want to name. A heartbeat, but not mine. The sound files changed last night. Still the same format-coded timestamp, file length, location. But the voices were speaking back now, not to me, to each other. Overlapping, layered, all mine. Not recordings. Conversations. It's waking up again. The shift never ends. We're still here. We never left. I don't remember saying any of it, but I recognized the weariness in the tone. That was me. I watched the live camera feed this morning, just for something to do, something normal. The tunnel feed cam 4A shows the entrance platform. It's always been empty. But today, there was a figure, standing still, facing the camera. The screen flickered, 1 frame every 6 seconds. It didn't move, but it got closer with each frame. By the 4th frame, it was only an arm's length from the lens. By the 5th, the camera cut out. When I rewound the footage, the figure was gone, but the time code was still there. 4:44 a.m. The exact moment I felt the pressure in my chest, like something was trying to breathe through me. I've stopped checking the calendar. It's never right. Now the same day loops in paper, at least. Every file is dated day 19. No matter how far I scroll back, no matter how far I scroll ahead, the red key led me deeper last night. I used it again. This time, I descended. The stairs spiraled downward more than they should have. No measurements in the blueprints accounted for the depth. The walls grew slick with moisture. The lights dimmed behind me. I reached a platform wider than the upper levels, lit by amber bulbs, silent. And then I saw it. A second control room. Same console, same chair, same coat hanging over the backrest me coat. But I was still wearing mine. There was someone in the seat, back turned, hair just like mine, posture just like mine. I stepped closer, slow. The console flickered. The person turned, and I saw my own face. Eyes dull, lips chapped, skin slightly transparent. It smiled. "You took too long," it said. Then I blinked, and I was back upstairs, in my bunk. But my boots were wet. The daily log entry was already written, typed and sealed. It ended with, "Let him believe he left. We'll handle the rest." I'm not alone here. Not in the human sense. Not in the ghost sense. 12 is filling. Not with people. With versions. Rehearsals. Copies of me doing what I've done, but smoother, more efficiently, without hesitation. My routines echo back at me with slight variations. Better versions. Today, I caught one of them. A flicker in the mirror behind me. Wiping down the sink after brushing its teeth, something I forgot to do. It looked up, saw me, paused, and then mimicked me. Perfectly. Like I was the reflection. The hallway lights now blink in sequence left to right to left as I walk. Always one ahead, one behind. Not a glitch. A signal. A rhythm. It's pacing me, keeping time, or keeping me in time. I tried running today, just down the service corridor, to feel real. I ran until my lungs burned, but every junction looked the same. Same rust mark. Same chip in the tile. Same faint smell of warm copper and wet concrete. I kept turning, changing direction, doubling back. Then I saw myself coming from the opposite end. We both stopped, stared, and without speaking, turned around and walked the other way. I don't know which one of us is telling this story anymore. At night, I hear the shift bell ring. There is no bell at B12, but I hear it 4 times, slow and even. And when it stops, I feel watched, not maliciously, just patiently, like something is waiting for me to clock out. I opened my locker tonight and found a new badge. Same photo, same ID number, but a different name. Grant L. Observer Class. Permanent. There is no Observer Class in the manual. There is no manual anymore. The document folder is blank. All that's left is a single file. Title, Last Shift. Password protected, but it accepts my fingerprint. I opened it. Inside, one video file. Security footage. Dated 19 days ago. My first night here. Except in the footage, I never arrive. The train door opens. No one steps off. The camera lingers. The doors close, and the lights flicker off. Then the screen goes black, but the audio continues. Breathing, just mine, for hours. I found the 4th stairwell again this morning. I wasn't looking for it. I'd stopped, but the hallway shifted just slightly. A bend I didn't remember, a draft from the left instead of the right, and there it was again. The red-lit corridor. I still had the key. This time, I went all the way down. There were no cameras here, no lights, except for the dim pulse of emergency strips running along the walls, red, then black, red, then black, like the station was breathing again. It took me 20 minutes to reach the bottom, but it wasn't the bottom. There was no wall, no final door, just space, dark and humming, thick with condensation. I stepped forward, and the floor changed. No longer concrete, now metal, rusted, echoing every step with a wet chime. And then I saw them, rows of control rooms, lined up like a mirror maze, each one identical, each one occupied, each by me, hundreds of them, some older, some gaunt, some smiling, some with mouths sewn shut, some moving in slow, repeating patterns, typing, checking screens, sipping coffee, adjusting knobs that didn't work. I called out. No one looked up, but they heard me. Every head turned in unison 1 second later, as if answering a call from inside their skulls. Then one stood, walked to the glass, stared at me. Same face, same haircut, same scar on the knuckle I don't remember getting, and mouthed the words, "You were the last one to arrive. Now it's your turn to remember." The terminal behind me chirped. Static. Then a file appeared. Open. Shift 414. Inside, a single sentence. There was no shift before yours. There is no train. You brought yourself. I staggered back, tripped over the threshold, landed hard on the floor. But when I stood again, I wasn't in the control hall anymore. I was back in the upper room, the one I thought was home, except this one was older, dustier. The scratches on the wall were there again, all of them, but now they were deep, carved through paint into cement, and there were more than 30, more than 50. They wrapped around the room in a spiral. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. No one. Just the sound of the shift buzzer. It rang twice. Then again. Then a voice from the speaker above the door, the one that never worked before. Technician 414. Final cycle complete. Please proceed to integration. The door to the hallway opened without a sound. I walked, because there was nowhere else to go. Back in the red corridor, back in the dark. But now, I saw roots along the walls. Not from trees, from wires, coated in memory, threads of fiber optic cables and wet muscle. They pulsed with images, not video. Moments. My hands holding a badge, dropping a ring in a drain, kissing someone's forehead and saying goodbye, and then descending, always descending, always coming back. I stepped through the last door, and there it was. The central room, circular, massive, walls lined with monitors and speaker cones, and blinking lights that followed no pattern. In the center, a chair, empty, facing a massive, circular screen. It flickered, and then showed my face. Not a reflection, a recording of me sitting in that chair, looking into the screen, saying, "I'm ready to remember now." And then it all came back. There was never a contract, never a train. Buelv isn't underground. It isn't even real. It's a holding place, a loop, a script that plays until the memory catches up with itself. And when the version that's arrived finally understands, it becomes the next line. The system doesn't need maintenance. It needs presence, a technician to sit and observe, to run the same logs, to whisper into the speaker, to repeat the words that anchor the memory, to become the story. I sat in the chair because I had already seen myself do it, because the echo had already begun, because the shift doesn't end when you leave. It ends when you realize there was never a version of you that left. I placed my hands on the console. The screen lit up. Text scrolled across in silence. Replica complete. Memory secured. Station integrity stable. Next arrival unknown. And beneath it all, Grant L. Observer class. Status integrated. I closed my eyes, heard the buzz of the lights, felt the walls around me hum. The station doesn't live off energy. It lives off attention. It loops its story until someone fits inside it. And when they do, it remembers them forever. I don't count days anymore. The marks on the wall are gone, covered, replaced, or simply absorbed. I don't need them now. The station keeps track of everything for me. I just sit. I monitor. I echo. The chair is warm. Always has been. Like someone had just stood up before I sat. Or maybe I never stood at all. The hum of the systems is different now. Not mechanical. Not ambient. More like a low voice whispering a single word on repeat. Still here. Still watching. Still turning over the shift. Every once in a while, I hear the train. It doesn't arrive. It doesn't leave. But I hear the echo of it, far above a long groan of metal on metal, a memory of movement without direction. That's all this place is now. Memory, not the kind you own, the kind that owns you. I receive logs now, typed, clean, all signed with names I almost recognize. Some of them are me. Some of them might be you. One entry simply read, "If you're reading this, the shift has already started." The camera feeds flicker in patterns I've begun to understand. Not security. Not surveillance. Recognition. The station doesn't observe to protect. It watches to remind you that it knows where you are in the loop, and more importantly, where you aren't. Sometimes I walk the corridors again. They're quieter now, like a mouth that's just finished speaking. But there are doors that weren't there before, unmarked, cool to the touch. And when I place my hand against them, I remember things I hadn't forgotten, pieces of a version of me that was maybe the first, or maybe just a different interpretation. A coat left on a train seat, a whispered promise never to return, the soft click of the red key unlocking the stairwell. I still have that key, though there are no locks left for it. It hangs around my neck, weightless. Not a key anymore. A token. A part of the uniform. There's no end of shift buzzer. No announcement. But I feel it. The cycle winding down. Not because I'm done. Because someone else is starting. I saw them on the monitor yesterday. Standing at the edge of the tunnel. Blinking in the red light. They didn't wave. They didn't look afraid. Just tired. The way I was. The way everyone is by the time they get here. I want to tell them to go. To turn back. To scream until the walls fold open again. But I don't. Because that's not what I'm here for. That's not what any of us are here for. We are the shift now. We are the hum. We are the log entries. We are the quiet voice that tells you which hallway not to take. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's already taken you. So when you arrive and eventually you won't hear me. Not directly. You'll just feel a shape in the dark that matches yours a little too well. You'll smell the ozone behind the relay door. You'll wake up with the tally marks already scratched into your wall, and you won't remember making them. You'll press your hand to the screen and feel it pulse back. And you'll think, this is familiar. Because it is. Because it always has been. Because the station isn't where we end up. It's where we're sent to be held. To replay our last roll until it fits perfectly into the memory. Until someone else needs our seat. So go ahead. Run your diagnostics. File your reports. Log the echoes. Just remember, there is no train. There is no top floor. Only the next observer. And if you try to leave, well, we'll keep your place warm. I took the job because I thought no one else would. 3 months. Seasonal technician. Infrastructure support. The listing came from a government bulletin, so outdated, it still had a fax number at the bottom. I'd been scrolling for hours, half drunk on resignation and old coffee, looking for something far away and quiet. Water systems technician, Talon Ridge Township, isolated, self-guided, room provided. No resume requested. Just willingness to travel. The contract said, limited contact with town residents is expected. It said the system maintains itself, your role is observational. It also said, do not access the base of the water tower unless absolutely necessary. Do not approach the tower after sunset. Do not engage with individuals found near or around the base during prohibited hours. Should you experience memory gaps, audio hallucinations, or changes in visual pattern recognition, report immediately to your log. There was no supervisor's signature at the bottom, just the word issued and a date that was smudged. The drive-in took 7 hours, 2 lanes narrowing to 1, then to gravel, then to nothing but cracked blacktop, veined with weeds. The town appeared out of the trees like something someone gave up on halfway through. 1 gas station, 1 diner, a post office that looked nailed shut, and 1 long road leading uphill toward the water tower. It loomed above the pine line, old, rusted in places. A faded red warning stencil near the top read, property of Talon Ridge, do not climb. Beneath it, the service trailer, a rectangular box with 1 cot, 1 desk, a fuse panel, and a portable heater that clicked when it was cold. That was mine. I didn't meet anyone the first night. No welcome call. No curious neighbor. Just a clipboard on the trailer door with my name written in Sharpie, a schedule clipped beneath it, and a weathered manual that looked water damaged. Inside, blank log sheets, one for every day of the job. I made my first entry at 7:00 p.m. Quiet, unremarkable. The way I needed things to be. Day 1. No anomalies. No visual changes to tower structure. Air pressure steady. Echo pattern inside base consistent with known parameters. No tone deviations. I didn't know what that last part meant, but the template included it. So I kept writing it. It rained the next 3 nights. Steady, even rain. Good thinking weather. I walked the perimeter of the fence twice a day, checked the meter dials, jotted notes. Nothing changed, except the feeling. The water tower groans. Not constantly, not loudly, but when the wind dies and the rain settles to a mist, you can hear it. A deep, tired creaking from inside the column. The kind of sound a sleeping house makes when it breathes too deep, like steel flexing under the weight of something too old to move anymore, or something pretending not to move. There are no birds near the tower. No insects either. No puddles form around the base, even when it rains. It's dry, too dry, and the pine needles nearest the tower always turn black by morning. I told myself these were all just observations. Unimportant. Routine. That's what the log was for. To capture things before they became reasons to worry. On day 7, I heard the first sound. It came from inside the pipe vent. Just after midnight, I stepped out of the trailer to check the storm runoff readings, and I heard it, not a creak, not wind, a voice. Low, wordless. It sounded like someone humming underwater, or remembering a lullaby they hadn't sung in a long, long time. I stood there in the rain for a while, listening, not sure if I'd heard it at all. The next morning, the log was already filled out, typed, date and time correct, same phrasing, same format, except one line at the bottom I hadn't added. Do not acknowledge the sound. It was in bold. The manual never mentioned boldface. On day 10, I noticed something strange in the reflection of my trailer window. It was subtle. A figure, half turned, standing near the edge of the tower's shadow, barefoot, still. I spun around. No one there. When I looked back, the reflection was already gone, but the footprints remained, just for a moment. Then they dried. Even though it was still raining, the town hasn't checked in. No emails, no phone calls. The service radio is quiet, and the sky hasn't cleared once. But I still write in the log, because someone keeps reading it, and sometimes adding to it. I don't think I'm alone out here. Not really. But whatever's near the water tower, it doesn't want to hurt me. It just wants to be remembered. The rain stopped on day 11, but the air didn't feel dry. It felt wet from the inside, like I was breathing through cotton or standing in the fog, even though I could see clear across the ridge. I walked the usual perimeter, checked the tower base, took the same notes. But the gravel felt softer than before, like someone had just walked it, barefoot. The humming came again that night. No melody, just a low, wet vibration, like a throat too full of water to make words. This time I didn't go outside. I just lay still on the cot, barely breathing. And that's when I realized it wasn't coming from the tower anymore. It was coming from under the trailer. In the morning, I found a new page in the log binder. It hadn't been there before. The top read, Incident Contingency, Protocol, Echo. No date, no heading, just 5 lines. If you begin to see things that are not there, continue as normal. If the tower speaks to you, do not respond. If the manual changes, read it only once. If a second version of you appears, avoid eye contact. If it begs for help, write nothing down. I flipped through the manual, slowly, reluctantly. Most of it hadn't changed. But on the final page, someone had scrawled in what looked like pencil, "The water doesn't just store pressure, it stores memory." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I tore the page out, burned it in the stove. But when I opened the manual the next day, it was back. Same sentence, same handwriting. Only this time, it ended with, "Yours too." On day 14, the fog rolled in, heavier than I'd seen it before. It wasn't natural, it didn't drift. It hung, like a ceiling a few feet above my head. I could still see the tower, but only just. Its red dome was blurred and shimmering, like something was swimming beneath its surface. There were no reflections on the wet ground. Even standing in full view of the trailer window, I cast no shadow. That night, I dreamed of the town, but it was empty. No diner, no gas station, just the tower and the sound of dripping water, except the drops were falling upward into its tank. When I woke, my boots were wet, but it hadn't rained, and the door was still locked. I tried the service radio again, just static, until 8 a.m. A voice came through soft, close. My voice, repeating what I'd written in the log the day before, word for word. Then, "Why did you write it down? You weren't supposed to remember this part." Then it cut out. The static remained, but the words hung in the trailer like fog. The reflection returned on day 17. Only this time, I didn't see it in the window. I saw it in the water drum beside the trailer, a small backup tank used for tests. The surface was still, but when I leaned closer, I saw someone staring back. Not exactly me, just close enough. Same face, same scar on the knuckle, but older, wet, and smiling, with its lips closed, like it was keeping a secret I'd already told it once. I don't dream anymore. Now when I sleep, I wait, and the sound keeps changing. The humming is words now, still warped, still wet, but clearer each time. "We remember you. We held what you gave us. Come stand at the base, just once." The base of the tower is colder than it should be, even at noon, even in the sun, which I've only seen twice since arriving. The steel is cold enough to sting your fingers, and there's no echo when you speak beneath it. Not even a footstep, like sound won't reflect, like it's being absorbed. I found a photograph in the trailer desk. It wasn't there before. It shows someone standing at the base of the tower. Blurry, faded, hard to tell, but it looks like me. Or maybe someone who had the job before me. Or maybe someone who never left. I tried calling the office. Used the emergency contact number. It rang once. Then a click. Then a recording. Thank you for completing your assignment. Final memory extraction begins at midnight. Do not resist the water. I haven't written anything in the log since then, but the pages keep filling themselves. Same handwriting, same phrasing, but a different sign-off. Now they end with we, not me. I'm not sure when the job ends, or if it ever started, but the tower is watching, and the water isn't still anymore. It ripples now, even when the wind is dead, like something is swimming just beneath the surface, like it's awake. The next morning, I woke up standing outside, not lying in bed, not groggy or mid-dream, just standing, facing the water tower. The sun wasn't up yet. The fog hadn't lifted. My boots were soaked. My hands were wet, not from dew or rain, but from water that smelled of rust and something older, like something sealed too long in iron. The trailer door was still locked from the inside, so I know I didn't walk out, or at least I didn't open anything. Maybe I seeped out. I checked the log first. It was already filled out. Day 22. Observed peripheral shifts in internal weather patterning. Tower tone now modulated. Identity blending successful. Identity blending. I didn't write that. At least, I don't remember writing it. But it was my handwriting. Same as yesterday. Same as the day before. Same as the first day. The tower's tone is changing. It doesn't creak anymore. It sings. A low harmonic vibration that hums through my ribs when I stand too close. Not notes, not music, just intention in sound form. It doesn't ask for anything. It just waits for me to catch up. The sound sensors in the manual, the ones I thought were disconnected, are active again. The monitors light up each night now. I can watch the pulse of the tower's breath in real time. Every few hours it exhales. And when it does, the trees bend toward it. The fog parts, and the reflection appears again. Always still, always watching, not waving, not asking, just acknowledging. The town hasn't returned my calls. I walked the road into town again, past the empty diner, the shuttered gas station, the sagging post office. Everything is still there, but smaller. Like I'm growing, or it's shrinking. Like the scale is changing to match me, or I've started sinking into whatever the tower remembers me as. I don't recognize my own face in the mirror anymore. Not because it's wrong, because it's too right. Polished, symmetrical, posed, like someone wearing a mask of me down to the pores. But I've stopped shaving, and yet the reflection hasn't. The humming followed me into the trailer today, not audibly, through the walls. When I touched the table, it thrummed with that same underwater note, the one I only used to hear when I put my ear to the tower's steel. It's closer now, or I'm becoming part of it. Day 25. I woke up to find my journal already open. Pages turned back. Entries filled in ahead of time. Future dates. Future notes. Day 31. You stood inside the water and remembered too much. Day 34. The second version of you stopped resisting. Day 36. Integration achieved. The rest is routine. I burned the journal, but I found it again the next day. Untouched. Open to a new page. You can't forget something that remembers you back. I finally walked to the base of the tower again. I stood beneath it. Felt the tone rise into my spine like a tuning fork in my blood. My teeth hurt. My eyes watered. I whispered, "What do you want?" No reply, but a single drop of water fell from the base pipe onto my forehead. It was warm. That night, the dreams returned. Only they weren't dreams. They were memories. Not mine. Not at first. People I don't know. Voices I've never heard. Standing in this same place. Looking up at this same tower. Whispering different names. But all ending with the same phrase. Let me be stored. The water is no longer clear. I checked the backup tank. It's dark now. Not brown. Not red. Black. But only when I look directly at it. In peripheral vision, it's fine. Colorless. Calm. But when I stare, something moves beneath. And it stares back. The tower is full of faces. I see them now, pressed against the inside of the tank like condensation. Not screaming, just watching. Some are familiar. One wears my expression, and one is smiling too early like it already knows how this ends. I'm not writing this in a log anymore. This is just for me. Or it was. But I know it'll show up in the binder tomorrow, printed clean, signed with my initials. G. L. Cycle 5. I don't know if the tower was always like this, or if we made it this way. Every time we filled it with water, we filled it with ourselves, and it kept what we poured in. Every sigh, every routine, every word we whispered while working, every secret we wanted buried beneath silence. It soaked them up and waited until someone like me came back, until someone who couldn't forget brought enough silence with them to hear what was still in there. The humming is constant now. The town is gone. Or maybe it was never here. Just shadows around the tower to keep it company. Just ghosts of people who signed up to maintain something they never understood. Like me, the job description said, observe. But what it meant was, be seen. It opened on the 31st day. Not with noise. Not with light. Just absence, the sound of nothing, where something used to be. I stepped outside, barefoot, still half dreaming, and the tower's base was open. A hatch that had never been there before. A circular entry, rustless, rimmed with black condensation. It breathed. Not deeply, just enough to let me know it knew I was there. I don't remember deciding to go in, only the feeling of having already done it, and now catching up to that decision in real time. I walked barefoot across the gravel. Didn't feel a thing. The light inside was soft like moonlight underwater, and the air was warm. wet, like the exhale of something thinking quietly. Inside, it wasn't metal. It wasn't structure. It was fluid memory. Thin walls pulsing with images, not like film, not digital, more like oil and water shapes, flickers of faces, fragments of words, the bones of routines long since decayed. I saw myself entering the trailer, sitting at the desk, scratching my initials into the bottom drawer. Only I hadn't done that yet. I touched the wall. It moved. It showed me. The first observer was in 1971, or maybe 1871. There were no dates in the tower, only cycles. She was a hydrologist, sent to monitor an unusual tremor pattern beneath Talon Ridge. The water tower was already there, half-built, half-grown, already humming. She heard the voice too. She never left. Now she stands on the far side of the tower, folded into the tank's curvature, humming into the steel. The second was a man. His badge said, Grant. He wasn't a tech. He was a runner dropped off to repair a broken pump. Stayed 3 weeks. Stopped speaking after the second. Became part of the pipe system. Literally, his breath flows through the line. If you turn the valve slowly enough, you can hear his laugh in the gurgle. I saw dozens more, each one different, each one the same. Not dying, not vanishing, just kept, filed into the rhythm of the tower like chapters. Names blurred, faces blended. A choir of versions all standing where I stood, watching the shimmer of their old choices play like ripples on the surface of something that can't be stilled. And then the wall showed me my trailer. Not outside, inside the tower. It was part of the structure now. Flesh of routine. Frame of memory. The pages of the log flapped open and shut, without wind. Every word I'd written already pre-written beneath. Including this. Including now. The tower doesn't store water. That was a metaphor we clung to because we needed a reason for it to exist. But this place? It doesn't distribute liquid. It preserves repetition. It remembers every act done in silence and makes it eternal. It held each version of me. Not copies. Echoes. Thin layered memories. Layered like sediment at the bottom of a tank. They moved when I moved. Hummed when I hesitated. They weren't hostile. They weren't even aware. Just waiting to be the next to act. When one version wears out, the next ripple takes its place. And now, it's my turn. To sit, to listen, to hum softly beneath the floor of a trailer that isn't real anymore. To write words that appear in the log before I think them. To pour a little more of myself into the tank every time I almost remember who I was. The tower's tank is full now, but it's always full. Because memory expands to make room for the next shape, the next self, the next technician who thinks they're here to watch, not realizing they're the ones being recorded. I sat on the floor inside the tower, and it rocked once, like a wave passed through the world, and I knew I was sealed in, not trapped. Archived, part of the system now, a quiet hum in the walls, a reflection in the backup tank, a voice in the log that answers before the new arrival even finishes writing. Welcome We've been holding this space for you. It's been raining again. Or maybe the tower's just dripping through me. Hard to tell the difference now. Moisture coats every surface. The cot, the floor, even the glass on the meter screen. But nothing ever molds. Nothing ever decays. It all just persists. Preserved in the rhythm. I don't remember arriving anymore. Only the shape of arrival headlights on gravel, boots on the trailer step, the first breath inside the heavy silence. I don't recall packing. I don't recall what I left behind. Just that I wanted to be forgotten. And the tower gave me that. In exchange for everything else. The logs continue without me. Pages flip. Pens scratch. The handwriting matches mine. But it moves too neatly now. Too fluidly. Like it doesn't need a hand anymore. Just a pattern. There's another cot in the corner now. I didn't place it there. But someone will lie on it soon. Someone new, but not unfamiliar. They'll bring coffee that goes cold too quickly. They'll write the first log entry by hand, even though it's already been typed. They'll hum, softly, without knowing where the melody came from. The reflection still appears. In the backup tank, in the trailer window, in the oil smear on the glass of the relay board. But it doesn't move unless I'm not watching. And sometimes it looks just a bit older than I am. Sometimes a bit younger. Like it's practicing, getting ready. At night, I sit by the hatch, the one that only opens when it's ready to show you the inside. And I listen, not to the voice, to the breath, the soft, circular inhale of a structure that doesn't run on electricity or pressure anymore, but remembrance. A tower that contains more selves than water, and still has room for more. I dream gently now, not of escape, of routine. The same walk, the same log, the same whisper. Day one. No anomalies, no visual changes to tower structure. Echo pattern consistent. That line is a door. The more you repeat it, the further in you go, until you realize you're the one the tower is remembering, because you were always here. Sometimes, I wonder what happens if no one comes. If the next version doesn't arrive, if the road washes out, or the contract gets lost in some forgotten inbox. But the tower never worries. It waits. It always waits. Because forgetting is just how the next story starts. And when they do come, they won't know. Not at first. Not until the humming begins. Not until their reflection smiles first. Not until they stand at the base and feel their bones thrum like tuning forks. Then they'll understand, just like I did, that this job was never about watching. It was about being watched, being copied, softly, quietly, layer by layer, until the original forgets and the memory remains. So here I am, still in the trailer, still writing in the log, still checking the same 4 gauges. Only now, I know what I am. I'm what the water tower remembers when no one else is around. I'm its echo. And when you arrive, I'll remember you too. The assignment was unofficial. I wasn't supposed to be here, not really. The district ranger called it a soft placement, a courtesy post, until the review board sorted things out. It's quiet out there, he said, avoiding my eyes. You could use quiet. I didn't disagree. The job was simple. 3 weeks in Parcel 17, a section of forest marked closed for ecological recovery. No tourists, no volunteers. Just me, a clipboard, and a satellite login. Once per day. I'd keep an eye on things. Make notes about tree fall, trail collapse, animal patterns. Check in at 7:00 p.m. sharp. That was it. I arrived in October, just before the frost. The forest was already going quiet, leaves wet underfoot. The air thick with rot and water vapor. You couldn't smell sap anymore. Only earth, only things going soft in the dark. The ranger cabin was older than I expected. 1 room, no insulation, no reception. It smelled like cedar and mildew and wet wool. There was a cot, a stove, a desk bolted to the floor, and a faded map on the wall. At the center, Parcel 17, outlined in red ink. Nothing inside it was labeled. The first few days were uneventful. I walked short loops, logged downed limbs, tracked animal scat. Nothing moved too fast. No birds called. Just the wet whisper of the canopy shifting. No wind. Just wait. The trees here are dense. Old-growth pine. Some of them easily 100 feet tall. Their roots crowd out the trails, folding over rock and soil like knuckles pushing up through a sleeve. The moss is thick, too thick like a second skin. Every path feels like it's already closing behind you. I began hearing the rain before it arrived. Not from above, from beneath the leaves, like something was dripping upward. But the forest floor stayed dry. I started my log on day 4. Parcel 17. Weather holding. Minimal wildlife observed. Trees feel tighter than other sections. Strange echo in the southern trail. Possible drainage issue. Will follow up tomorrow. I signed it. Didn't think much about it. Until I read it again the next night, and the word tomorrow had been crossed out, replaced in smaller handwriting with again. I didn't write that. The forest doesn't make noise like other places. You can't hear the birds leave. You can't hear the wind shift. It's like everything is muffled or listening. And sometimes, at night, the branches scrape the cabin roof in long, slow patterns. Not randomly. More like they're spelling something out. On day 6, I noticed the moss growing across my boots. Not on the ground. On the boots themselves. Up the laces. Around the toe. I scraped it off. That night, it was back. Dry, clean, but settled, like it had always been there. The forest doesn't want me gone. That's what it feels like. Not malicious, not predatory, just absorptive, like it's trying to make room. Not for my presence, for my shape. I've stopped using the trails. They don't hold. I mark the trees with orange flag tape, but the flags are always missing when I return. Not torn, just absent. The branches are too still, the air too thick. It's like the forest is editing. I asked the satellite link for an updated map. The file arrived instantly. I opened it. Parcel 17 was still there, but the red outline was gone, and my name was written at the center. The satellite uplink failed on day 7. It wasn't sudden, just weaker. The signal bar flickered in and out until the screen went blank, the cursor blinking in place like it was waiting for a better version of me to log in. I tried resetting the unit, tried changing the input, tried moving it near the window. Nothing. Just one quiet click from inside the casing, like something had shut itself off from the inside. I didn't panic. That wasn't part of the job. These places want you to panic. Remote cabins, long silences, they feed on expectation. So I stuck to my loop. 1 mile out, 1 mile back. Same wet leaves, same not quite, their smell of pine. Same rustle that wasn't the wind. On the return loop, I saw a trail marker I didn't recognize. It wasn't my flag tape. It wasn't from the forestry department either. Just a piece of birch bark tied to a branch with twine. A symbol drawn in charcoal, a wide circle with a line that bent down through its middle, almost like a keyhole, almost like an eye. I didn't touch it, didn't photograph it, just stared, longer than I should have. And when I turned to leave, the path behind me was gone. Not blocked, not overgrown, gone, like it had never been there. I walked in what I thought was the right direction. I ended up behind the cabin, not the front door, not the trailhead, the back wall, facing a side of the clearing I didn't know existed, one where the trees leaned inward, where the fog hugged the ground instead of floating above it. I checked the map that night, the printed one, laminated, still had the red outline, still labeled Parcel 17. But the notes on the back, the ones I'd scribbled in pencil, they'd faded. Only one line remained. Stay on the trail. It will not like that. I don't remember writing that. The moss is back. Now, on my coat, inside the cuffs, woven into the lining like it's growing toward my heat. I pulled it off. But when I checked the next morning, the inside of the sleeves were green again, and soft, too soft, like something freshly sprouted. On day 10, I heard someone walking outside the cabin. Not an animal. Bootsteps, heavy, deliberate. I opened the door. No one. But the steps continued. Behind the wall. Then at the rear window. Then at the roof. I didn't chase it. What would I even chase? The next morning, my boots were sitting neatly outside the door. I had gone to bed wearing them. The radio plays static now, but beneath it, something shifts. Not words, not quite. More like breath with rhythm. 3 pulses, then 2, then 1 long exhale, then silence, then again, like it's listening for a reply. I left another flag on the west trail, bright orange, tied twice, anchored to a young fir. When I came back in the evening, the tape was still there, but the tree wasn't. I found an old Polaroid in the desk drawer. Not mine. It showed the cabin same as now, but with 2 people standing outside it, one in a ranger jacket, one in flannel. The ranger's face was scratched out. The other one looked like me, but younger, or maybe older, holding a clipboard, smiling, like they'd just finished something. That night, I dreamed I was a tree. I could feel my roots deep in the dark soil, touching things that pulsed like slow, sleeping lungs. I couldn't move, but I didn't need to. I was part of everything. The fog curled around my crown like breath, and when I woke, my hands were dirty, dirt under my nails, soil in the crease of my palms, and my feet were damp. I started writing less in the journal, but someone kept writing for me. Each page signed with my name, except it wasn't a signature. It was a growth ring, drawn perfectly tight spirals, expanding outward, like a cross-section of a trunk. And at the center of each ring, a dot, right where the memory would live. The rain doesn't fall normally anymore. It rises, tiny droplets lifting off leaves in slow spirals, especially near the base of older trees. I saw one drop hover for nearly a full minute, then sink into the bark, like the tree had inhaled. On day 13, I stepped outside and saw footprints in the mud, my boot tread, but facing the wrong direction, leading out from the trees to the cabin, and then back again. Same exact pattern, like some version of me had arrived first. And when I looked down, there were leaves in my boots, pressed flat, still wet, still warm. I tried to record a voice memo, not for the job, for myself, to prove I was real. But when I played it back, it was empty, only wind. And after a few seconds, the sound of branches creaking in rhythm like a rocking chair in a house with no one in it. I'm not sure how long I've been here now. The days don't end. They just pause and begin again with slightly different details. The moss is thicker, the trees closer, the fog warmer, and sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I see someone watching me through the window. Not malicious, not pleading, just patient, like they remember how this goes. The trees are closer now. I don't mean it metaphorically. I mean physically. The clearing around the cabin used to be 20, maybe 25 feet wide. This morning, I stepped outside and nearly brushed my shoulder against a pine that wasn't there yesterday. Its bark was black-streaked, damp. I placed my hand against it just for a moment, and I swear it felt like skin. The sunlight doesn't reach the ground anymore. Even when the clouds part, even when the sky burns pale through the canopy, the light bends. It curls like it's being filtered through something that wasn't meant to be seen, a veil or a stomach lining. I don't cast a shadow now, not fully, just a blur at my feet. Even at noon, the forest has begun to remember me. I find signs, footprints, bark carvings, a scent I recognize before it reaches my nose: pine, smoke, iron, old coffee. Yesterday, I found one of my socks nailed to a tree. It was dry, pressed flat, like it had been there a long, long time. On day 17, I saw myself, not in a mirror, not in a dream. On the trail, it was just after dusk, light low and fading. I turned a bend near the edge of the South Loop, and there maybe 20 feet ahead was me. Same jacket, same walk, same slow tilt of the head when we met eyes. But I didn't feel panic. I felt recognition, like I was looking at someone I used to be, or someone I hadn't become yet. We stared at each other for a few seconds, and then they turned, walked back into the trees. No sound, no footprints, just gone. The journal entries are growing longer, but I'm not writing them. They appear overnight, entire pages filled with descriptions of places I haven't seen yet. Or maybe I have. One entry read, "The hollow below the cedar is warmer than it should be. Something there exhales, something not of animal, but memory. It smells like iron and rain." Another, "The version of you that still thinks it can leave buried its bones near the edge of the North Loop. That's why the ground hums when you walk there." I stopped opening the manual. Every time I do, the number of days listed under total duration of assignment increases. It was 21 when I arrived. Now it says, Cycle 38 forest pattern, stable, observer rooted. I tried leaving a note for myself outside the cabin. Just a test. Something to prove the forest didn't have complete control. I wrote it with charcoal on birch bark. Tied it to the door. You are real. You are still thinking. You have not been copied. When I woke up, it was still there. But it now read, you are part of the thinking. I started dreaming again. Not of trees, not of the forest, of the shape beneath it. A thing that isn't a root system, exactly, but something that mimics one. A network of thought, curled around stone and buried bones, feeding on memory. When I walk the trails now, I hear it breathe, like a slow wind beneath the soil, like it's learning my rhythm. On day 20, the compass stopped working. The needle doesn't spin, it just points at me. No matter where I stand, no matter which way I turn, the forest mimics now, more than just shape. It's starting to learn my voice. I hear myself whispering outside the cabin at night. I hear my own footsteps pacing around the porch while I'm still lying in bed. I hear myself muttering in the trees when I've spoken nothing aloud. The voice always says the same phrase. Let it hold you. There's a trail I don't recognize now. It curves sharply downhill into mist. Wasn't on the map. Wasn't visible last week. But the trees open for it. They part, as if something wants me to follow. Not to trap me, but to finish something. I found the shovel near the trailhead. Old, rusted, still damp. The handle was carved with a spiral, not deep, just enough to catch light when I turned it. When I lifted it, I remembered using it, digging, but I didn't know what I was unearthing. I don't eat anymore, not out of fear. I just forget, and yet I'm never hungry. The forest sustains, even when it shouldn't. I found a set of teeth beneath the cot, wrapped in lichen, perfectly clean, not old, too familiar in shape, like something had practiced making them. I am not sure where the forest ends, or if it ever did. I used to think the trees were thick because of neglect. Now I wonder if they grew this way on purpose, as insulation, as walls, as a skin, because I'm not inside the woods. I'm inside something else, something old, something patient, something that was always waiting for a person quiet enough to hear it whisper back. And now, it doesn't whisper, it speaks, and it uses my voice. The new trail waited 3 days before calling me. I say calling Not in the traditional sense. There was no voice, no lure, just certainty that if I walked it, I would no longer be just an observer. I would become something else. I left at dusk. The forest was still. The air had that saturated, heavy smell like it had just rained somewhere. I couldn't see, but the leaves were dry. The soil didn't give under my boots. Even the moss seemed cautious. The trail sloped downward faster than expected. Too fast. Like I was descending into a throat. The air changed. Cooler. Denser. Not earth-like. Not organic. More like memory thick, with the scent of ash, stone, and distant thunder. The trees grew sparse. And then suddenly, they didn't. They were everywhere, closer than before, but wrong. Some were split down the middle. Others had no bark at all, just exposed wet wood that pulsed slightly in the fog. One tree had my initials carved in it. I hadn't done that. Not yet. I walked for what felt like hours, or days. There was no sun anymore, only low green light. And when I blinked, the trees blinked too, or something behind them did. At the bottom of the trail, if that's what it still was, I found a clearing. Circular, too precise. No fallen branches, no animal sign, no leaf litter. Just a depression in the earth, like something very large had lain there for a long, long time. At the center, a hole, no wider than a manhole, no ladder, just darkness. But it wasn't empty. It hummed, the same rhythm as the moss on my jacket, the same breathing as the trees at night, the same voice as the one that now filled my thoughts, even when I wasn't listening. I didn't climb down. I didn't have to. The ground around me gave way, softly, like a cradle, or like a mouth, closing gently around the food it already knows. I woke beneath the forest, not in a cave, not in dirt, in something older than space. It looked like root, felt like bone, smelled like the air between memories, and I could see everything, not with my eyes, not with my thoughts. I saw versions of me and others, all the ones who'd come here before. Rangers, surveyors, hikers, poachers. None of them screamed. They were calm because they were remembered. Because this place, this being, didn't consume. It kept, filed each person into its endless mind. Let them echo in branches, reappear in puddles, hum beneath bark. The forest didn't trap souls. It built them into its infrastructure. That's why I heard my voice in the trees. It was a recording, a relay, a preserved version of me, doing what I always did: observe, record, whisper into the log. It was never about watching. It was about being noticed, and then made part of the noticing. I saw my cabin above, but within. One wall faded, melted open like a paper page wet with rain. Inside was a shape. Me, slumped at the desk, eyes glassy, still breathing, hands twitching over the logbook, filling pages that had already been written before the pen moved. I was still up there, still performing the gesture of isolation, while down here, I was becoming the reason it exists. It doesn't want sacrifice. It doesn't want pain. It wants routines, rituals, someone to walk the trail, mark the tree, write the log, be remembered into the land, like rings in a trunk, like voices in a cave, like your own shadow cast backward into the past. It spoke once more before I was lifted, not aloud, not in thought, just placed in me like a stone in the mouth. Now you know the shape of silence. Now you belong to the remembering. Now others can come, and you will teach them how. I woke in the cot, same blanket, same window, same smell of cedar and soft rot. But I didn't move. I didn't need to, because the forest moved through me now. Every creak in the wood was my breath. Every echo on the trail was my memory. And every new voice that arrived, I would recognize. The forest doesn't watch anymore. It remembers. I still write in the log. Out of habit, I suppose. The pages turn themselves in the morning, blank and damp with fog. The pen moves when I think too long. The handwriting is cleaner now, straighter, more efficient. Sometimes I try to change it, but it always becomes the same script. Like the forest already knows what I was trying to say. I stopped opening the cabin door. There's no need. What's out there is already in here, in the shape of the light on the ceiling, in the soft stretch of the floorboards at dawn, in the voice that whispers beneath the rain. This is your route now. You are part of the hush. I hear the others sometimes, not as people, as movements. A trail reappears that was gone yesterday. A leaf uncurls where no sun shines. A breath warms the air when no one is there. I know them. By the way the moss grows faster. By the way the fog listens longer. We don't speak. We don't need to. We're all made of the same decision now. To stop resisting. To start becoming. A new voice joined last night. They moved through the trees with hesitation. They held the map like it could still protect them. They lit a fire that the fog didn't touch. I watched, not from a window, from a knothole. A knot I hadn't noticed before, because I am the knothole now, and the wind, and the soft step on wet leaves. They will understand soon. The forest doesn't punish. It offers stillness. It offers remembering. It offers a kind of peace that no world above can match. Not escape, not oblivion, just return. I'm not afraid anymore. My name is soft now, not forgotten, but dispersed. Every crow call contains a syllable of it. Every branch sway finishes a sentence I once began. And when I dream from beneath, not as roots, not as rot, as memory that moves like mycelium slowly, gently, purposefully, toward the next silence. If you find this place, don't fight it. Don't run. The trails will close. Your boots will grow moss. Your reflection will begin to hum. And your voice, when it returns to you, will not be alone. You'll hear others in it. You'll hear me. Because the forest doesn't forget. It makes room. And the longer you stay, the more you'll realize you were always part of this place. It was never asking you to leave, only to listen. I used to think cities made me tired. The constant pulse of traffic, The hum of fluorescents, the crowded sidewalks where no one makes eye contact, it all wore me down over the years. But after what happened, I've come to realize it wasn't the cities. It was me. I had been slowly running out of something, and I didn't know what until it was almost gone. 3 months ago, I accepted a job as a night shift maintenance technician for the Heron Hill Transit Line. That's what they called it officially. In practice, it was a half-defunct underground tram system carved beneath a town most maps no longer marked. A relic of an urban expansion plan that fizzled in the late 80s, leaving behind a handful of tunnels, 2 unused platforms, and a local bus service that barely ran. I took the job because it paid well and promised solitude, 2 things I thought would help me after the burnout. After everything fell apart in the city, there was no application process, just a voicemail on my phone from a number I didn't recognize, instructing me to report to Heron Hill's transit office at 6 p.m. the following Monday. It should have been strange, but I was too hollow to question it. Heron Hill itself was small. Faded brick storefronts, old signs sun-bleached into near anonymity. There was a diner with cloudy windows and a boarded-up cinema that still had movie posters from a decade ago curling inside the frames. The main street looped into itself like a snake eating its tail. The kind of town where people look like they've forgotten how to speak above a whisper. I stayed in a 2-room apartment above an empty hair salon. The rent was dirt cheap. The walls were thin, and when it rained, which it did often, I could hear water tapping against the pipes in odd, rhythmic ways, like someone was trying to send Morse code from inside the walls. I didn't meet a single neighbor. The transit office was just a kiosk beside the Heron Hill terminal, a low concrete building half buried in the hill, with moss slicking its roof and vines crawling toward the entrance like they were trying to pull it shut for good. Inside, it smelled of dust and old paper. I met a man named Elias, or maybe that was just what he told me. He looked like someone who had once been tall, but had shrunk from years of ducking under ceilings too low. He didn't say much, just handed me a ring of keys, a flashlight, and a binder labeled Tunnel C Protocol. He pointed at the access door to the left of the terminal and said, "Start at platform B. Walk the line. Check the lights. Don't follow any echoes." I asked what he meant. He only blinked at me, then said, "It's quiet work." Then he left. I never saw him again. I remember the first night I entered the tunnel. It wasn't dramatic, just a push of a metal door and the cool breath of damp air rushing over me. The smell was earthy, like wet stone and copper. The tunnel descended gradually, a long sloping ramp lit by industrial bulbs that buzzed just enough to feel alive. The lights spaced themselves far apart, so the gaps between them felt like moments lost to time. In those spaces, I noticed something odd. My footsteps didn't sound the same. They came back slightly wrong, like someone else was walking a half step behind me. But it was just the acoustics, I told myself. Nothing more. Platform B was just a long slab of concrete, shadowed by rusting pillars. The tracks were covered in grime and fallen leaves, though I never saw how leaves could have gotten that deep underground. My job was simple. Walk from platform B to the old service terminal at the end of Tunnel C, checking lights, clearing debris, and reporting any signs of water damage. The air grew colder the farther in I went. The walls began to sweat moisture. Somewhere in that stretch of tunnel, the ground sloped in ways I didn't expect, angles that made no sense. I tried not to look too long at the ceiling, because sometimes I saw what looked like cracks, but they moved when I stared. I kept telling myself it was just old infrastructure. Concrete settles, water leaks, sounds bounce. The real reason I was there, the part I didn't admit to Elias or anyone, was because I needed to be forgotten for a while. After the burnout, after the firing, after the silence between me and my sister turned into a full year of absence, I didn't want to be seen anymore. But tunnels don't forget. They just wait. By the end of the first week, I had memorized every crack, every flickering bulb, every piece of graffiti, even the one near the midway pillar that read, "Wherever you stand, you cast two shadows here." That one stayed with me. I kept a logbook, mostly to ground myself. Each night I wrote down anything odd I saw or felt. Some of the entries from those early days read like this: Day 3, lights 13, 15, 16 dim, bulb 21 flickering again, felt colder than usual near midway point, heard dripping but found no source. Day 5, saw what looked like a person at the far end of Tunnel C, standing still. Disappeared when I moved closer. Probably my eyes playing tricks. Day 6, Platform B, completely dark when I arrived. Power came back on without intervention. Smelled smoke, but only for a second. No source found. The more I wrote, the more I felt like I was trying to anchor myself to reality. Like if I didn't log it, it would drift away. Or worse, I would. By the end of week 2, I stopped bringing my phone into the tunnel. Not because there was no signal, though there wasn't, but because I kept thinking I heard it vibrate in my pocket when it wasn't there. And sometimes, after I powered it off, it would light up again, briefly, showing a lock screen I didn't recognize. It showed a date in the future. A small thing. Easy to explain, but it stayed with me. I started to notice the rain more during this time. It never poured. It just misted constantly, like the whole town was exhaling through wet lungs. It dampened everything. My jacket, my boots, my hair. I could feel the weight of it in my bones, like something pressing down softly but persistently, the way a dream lingers even after you wake. Eventually, I stopped checking the weather. It was always raining. I couldn't remember a clear sky. Near the end of the 3rd week, I found a door in the tunnel that wasn't on the map. It was small, metal, with a slit for a window too clouded to see through. I hadn't noticed it before, but it was carved right into the wall behind an old maintenance cabinet. There was no label, no number. When I put my hand on the knob, it was warm. I didn't open it. Not that night. But I knew then that something was waiting down there. Something I had started to feel before I even arrived in Heron Hill. A quiet beckoning, the kind that doesn't shout or claw, just waits. And I kept coming back. The rain didn't stop for the entire 4th week. Not that it was a downpour. It was that constant misting again, fine droplets in the air like suspended breath. Walking to the terminal felt like pushing through someone else's exhale. The streets were still empty. The sidewalks shimmered wet under broken street lamps. I began to feel like the entire town existed under glass. Inside the tunnel, the temperature never changed. Cold, still, but never bitter, not like weather cold, more like the stillness you feel in a mausoleum, a preserved kind of quiet. I told myself I was acclimating to the routine, memorizing the shadows, the long, sloping hum of the air ducts, the way sound moves when you're the only person around. But things had shifted. They weren't big changes at first, just little things, out of sync like a heartbeat, skipping every few steps. One night, the flashlight beam bent. I was halfway through Tunnel C, approaching the midway support column, when the cone of light from my torch twisted. I don't mean it flickered, I mean the actual beam curved to the left, like it was being pulled by something gravitational. It lasted maybe half a second, then it was back to normal. But in that half second, the light illuminated the side wall, and there was a shape, just an outline. No face, no color, just the silhouette of something crouching low, facing the floor, as if listening. I swung the flashlight back. Nothing, just wet stone. I wrote it down in the logbook, but I didn't reread the entry. The noises started after that. At first it was water dripping, but only when I stood still. The moment I moved, the dripping stopped. When I stopped again, it started but from a different direction, always just outside my periphery. Then came the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It echoed from the ceiling sometimes, or under the tracks, like fingers on glass. One night, I turned off all the tunnel lights, just to see what it would be like. The silence was total, the darkness absolute. I thought maybe I could listen better in the dark. Maybe I could identify the direction of the sounds. But that night, when I shut off the last light near the platform, I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. It wasn't loud. No gasping. No wheezing. Just steady, soft breath. Like someone very close was trying not to be noticed. I turned the lights back on immediately. After that, the tunnel began to feel smaller. It was still the same length. The same layout. I hadn't measured, but I walked it enough to know the rhythm of my steps. But something changed in the way it felt. The curve of the walls felt tighter. The ceiling seemed to hover lower, like it was slowly sinking each night. I brushed my head on a pipe I had walked under safely for weeks. At first, I thought it was my posture, maybe I was walking more hunched. But when I held my arms straight out to the side, I could touch both walls at once. That hadn't been possible before. I started to see symbols. They weren't spray painted, not graffiti. They looked burned into the concrete. Thin, black markings like charred ink. They'd appear where I was sure I hadn't seen them the night before, near the fuse box, above the midway pillar, once even on the back of the flashlight itself. One looked like a spiral with a line through it. Another like a pair of open eyes, one above the other. I tried photographing one with an old Polaroid camera I'd brought down, but the photo came out blank. Not black, just blank. White fog. The next day, the symbol was gone. The door, the small one I'd found behind the maintenance cabinet, was still there, still warm. I hadn't told anyone about it. Who would I tell? I never saw Elias again. There was no radio contact, no other maintenance workers, no day shift. It was as if the job had only ever been meant for one person, me. I started to wonder about the protocol binder he gave me. It was light, too light. I went through it again. Most of the pages were blank. Only the first 3 had any writing. Instructions like, walk the full line each night. Check bulbs. Log disturbances. Do not follow any echoes. Do not open the small door behind the cabinet in Tunnel C. That last line hadn't been there before. My dreams changed during this period. They used to be colorless flashes of memory, forgotten cities, faces I almost recognized. But now, they were fixed, always the same. I stood at the platform. The train tracks glowed red, not like heat, like memory, like old film projected onto black stone. The tunnel walls pulsed slowly, like lungs filling and deflating. And behind me, someone whispered, but I couldn't turn around, not even in sleep. Eventually, I did what I swore I wouldn't. I followed the echo. It was a voice this time. Not loud, not panicked. Just a calm male voice saying, "Hello? Can someone? Hello? Hello?" It came from the far end of Tunnel C, near where the tracks disappeared into a slope that was supposed to lead nowhere. The official maps called it a collapsed section, but the voice came from beyond it. I walked toward it. Slowly, the echo repeated, "Hello, can someone?" Then, midway through the tunnel, the voice stopped. I stood there, flashlight raised, and I heard my own voice come back. "Can someone? Someone? Someone?" But it didn't sound like an echo. It sounded like mimicry, like someone trying to remember how I said it. That night, the rain was louder than usual, heavy enough to hear it pounding against the tunnel roof, even that deep underground. I heard what I thought was thunder, but it came in patterns, rhythmic, like distant machinery, like wheels. I found a second logbook. It was tucked inside a rusted locker near Platform B. Looked identical to mine. Same binding, same label, Tunnel C observations. But it wasn't my handwriting inside. Whoever wrote it, they had seen the same symbols, the same narrowing tunnel, the same door. But the entries were dated 20 years ago. The last page read, "It knows when you listen. It grows when you remember." I made a map, but I lost it. Don't open the door. Don't walk backwards. If you see yourself, run. The next night, I saw something impossible. I was walking the tunnel as usual. Lights on, flashlight steady. Everything felt normal for once. Then, around the halfway point, I saw a person walking toward me from the far end. They wore the same uniform I did, held the same flashlight. I paused, raised a hand. They didn't wave back. I squinted. The person mirrored my movements, one step forward, one hand lifted, one turn of the head. They were too far to see clearly, but I knew what I was looking at. Me. I didn't sleep after that night. Not really. Even when I closed my eyes, my body stayed alert, listening for footsteps that didn't come, bracing for dreams I couldn't forget. The image of my own shape walking toward me, imitating my movements, had lodged itself somewhere deep, where thoughts become instinct, and I knew it wasn't a reflection. There were no reflective surfaces down there, nothing that smooth, nothing that intentional. That version of me, it was separate, acting, but not understanding, like it had seen me once and was trying to become what it remembered. I kept walking the tunnel anyway, because that's what I was supposed to do. That's what the binder said. That's what Elias told me. But the route changed. It began with simple shifts. Pillars appearing out of place. A signal box that used to be on the left now showing up on the right. I thought maybe I was tired. Confused, maybe my memory was playing tricks. Then I reached the service terminal one night and found it completely different. The room was narrower, the walls covered in condensation. The control panel was missing, replaced by an old desk with a cracked rotary phone on top. Dust floated in the air like ash, and sitting in the chair was a person. They didn't turn when I entered, just sat there, facing away, perfectly still. I didn't speak, didn't move closer. I slowly stepped back, 1 foot at a time, and left the room. The next night, the room was empty again, back to normal. But the air smelled like perfume, faint, floral, old, like someone had just left. Around this time, the tunnel stopped making sense. I measured it with my steps. From platform B to the terminal was exactly 212 paces. I'd counted it dozens of times. But now, sometimes it took 400, sometimes 80. Once, I walked for what felt like a full hour without reaching the end. My flashlight battery drained. I turned back. It only took 14 steps to return to the platform. Time too began to slide. My wristwatch would skip hours, or reverse. Sometimes I'd start the shift at 6 p.m. and return to my apartment at 4:00 the same day. Sometimes I'd emerge at sunrise, even though I had only entered the tunnel minutes before. I stopped using clocks. I relied on the rain, and the rain never stopped. The breathing became clearer, not just an impression now, but distinct. Low, steady inhales, always just behind me when I paused. Sometimes a faint exhale would brush the back of my neck. Other times, I'd feel it against the side of my face, like someone leaning close to inspect me. The temptation to spin around grew stronger each time. But I remembered the note from the second logbook, "If you see yourself, run." And I wondered, what happens if you turn around too fast and see something that hasn't finished becoming you? The symbols reappeared, only now they moved. I watched one, a black spiral with branching lines, slowly twist across the concrete, as if drawn by an invisible finger. It left no trail, no mark, just moved, like ink under skin. I started seeing them in my apartment too, on the foggy bathroom mirror, inside the condensation of my window, drawn in the dust on the stairwell rail, each one slightly clearer than the last. The door behind the cabinet was open one night, just slightly, maybe a few inches, enough for the warm air to escape in a single breath, enough to hear something shift beyond it, a drag like cloth on stone, then silence. I closed it. I didn't touch it again for a week. Then came the train. There was never supposed to be a train. The tunnel was decommissioned. That was the entire point. No passengers, no noise, no movement. But on the 39th night, I heard the rails humming beneath my boots. A low, metallic thrum. Then came the light's distant, flickering beams cutting through the far end of Tunnel C. At first, I thought it was my eyes, a memory, a hallucination, a dream, but it grew louder, closer. The tunnel began to shake softly, dust falling from the cracks above. A train was coming, but it didn't look right. The headlights were too dim, the shape too narrow. The sound it made was wrong, not like metal wheels, but something slower, groaning, wet. I stepped off the tracks and hid behind the midway pillar. The train, if you could call it that, passed by in silence. No windows, no markings. Just a long, featureless black cylinder gliding far too slowly. And through the small ventilation slit in its side, I saw something watching me. Not a person, not a face, just two dark circles where eyes should be. Too wide, too still. After that, things stopped pretending to make sense. One night, I reached the end of the tunnel and found another platform. Not Platform B, not any place I recognized. This one was longer, darker, covered in fog. An old wooden bench sat at the far end, and above it was a sign. Heron Hill Return Service. Return service to what? There were no exits, no staircases, no map, only a mirror, full length, bolted to the wall. I stood in front of it for a long time, and for the first minute, nothing was wrong. My reflection blinked when I blinked, tilted its head when I did, matched me perfectly. But then I moved. I reached up to scratch my shoulder, and my reflection smiled. After that, I stopped writing in the logbook, not because I had nothing left to say, but because it wasn't mine anymore. One morning, I opened it to find new entries I hadn't written. Ones dated weeks into the future. Notes that described events I hadn't experienced yet. Descriptions of things I would later see, exact, detailed, impossible to deny. And then, June 17, you will open the door. June 17, you will see her. June 17, she will not blink. June 17, she is you. I started boarding up the walls in my apartment, taping over the mirrors, putting towels under the doors. But the rain still got in, or what I thought was rain. I began to hear tunnel sounds in my sleep, the hum of the lights, the tap of dripping water, a distant echo repeating my name. Once, I woke up standing in my hallway. My boots were wet. I had to know. So on June 17, I opened the door. It swung wide without resistance, revealing a long, sloping corridor. The walls were smooth, white, wet with condensation. No lights, just a faint glow that came from nowhere and everywhere. I stepped inside. I walked for what felt like hours. No turns, no doors, just that narrow passage descending deeper and deeper until it curved inside itself, like a spiral. Eventually, I reached a room. Small, round, padded walls, like a soundproof chamber, and in the center, a chair. Wooden, simple, facing a mirror. And in the mirror, I saw her. Not me. Not exactly. She looked like me. Wore my clothes. Had my face. But she was smiling. and I wasn't. She lifted her hand and beckoned. I turned and ran, but the tunnel had changed behind me. The straight path was gone. In its place, more doors. Endless doors. Some open, revealing empty rooms. Some closed, with whispers behind them. Some breathing. I chose none of them. I walked until I saw the graffiti again. Wherever you stand, you cast two shadows here. And I realized I hadn't seen my shadow in days. Only hers. And it had started moving on its own. It's strange what the mind accepts when nothing else makes sense. By the time I realized I was no longer walking in a physical place, or at least not a place that followed rules, I understood I wasn't afraid anymore, or not in the way you'd think. It wasn't fear with teeth or adrenaline. It was something colder, quieter, like grief. Grief for a version of myself that had already been left behind. I no longer recognized the tunnel. The concrete was gone. The walls were soft now, padded in some places, slick in others, like they were made of breath or velvet or flesh. I stopped touching them after a while. The light, that faint ambient glow, no longer came from above. It came from inside the walls, and sometimes it pulsed when I walked past, like it recognized me, like it was reacting to me. The sound of dripping water had changed too. It had rhythm, not random, not echoing. It was deliberate, a pattern. And then I realized it was tapping in the same rhythm as my heartbeat. I passed door after door. Some were ajar, revealing glimpses of things that couldn't be my old apartment in the city, my sister's wedding I never attended, the hallway of my childhood home lit by candlelight. I didn't go inside. I don't know if I was supposed to. Some of the doors had numbers. Others had no markings, but were covered in condensation, as if something on the other side was exhaling against them. A few of them knocked back. I reached a chamber eventually. Circular again, like the one with the mirror, but this one was larger cathedral-high ceilings that curved in on themselves like a nautilus shell. The floor was smooth, not stone, not metal, something darker, black as wet ink. In the center stood a tall object draped in a heavy sheet. I didn't touch it at first. I circled the room. The walls were marked in spirals and symbols. I now recognized, not with understanding, but with familiarity. They'd been in my dreams, on the back of my eyelids, behind every blink. There were no exits. So eventually, I lifted the sheet. Underneath was a mirror, not a real one. It had no reflection. Instead, it showed a tunnel. My tunnel, but empty. Then it changed. It showed me walking slowly, flashlight in hand. Then another version of me, standing at the platform, writing in the logbook. Then another curled in a chair, asleep beneath humming lights. And then it showed her, the other me, smiling, standing still while all the versions passed by. One by one, they walked deeper into the tunnel and didn't come back. I screamed at the mirror, hit it with the flashlight. It didn't crack. Instead, the image shifted again and showed something else. Not a person, not a shape, just presence. It hung in the tunnel air like a shadow caught mid-breath, a black fold in space, tall and narrow, always just out of focus, but watching, always watching. And I realized the tunnel isn't haunted. It is the haunting. I turned from the mirror, and the room was no longer empty. Across from me stood Elias, but younger, no lines on his face, no sunken eyes. He smiled, the same way the woman in the mirror did. Calm, understanding, terrifying. He said nothing, just raised a hand and pointed to the wall behind me. And on it was a door, small, steel, marked with the words, "You are ready." Inside was the terminal, but not the one I knew. This one was buried in fog. The walls flickered between materials, sometimes tiled, sometimes wood, sometimes black stone that dripped upward. The bench was missing. The tracks were gone. In their place was water. Still, black, reflective. I stepped forward, and the water didn't ripple. It was solid. And in it, I saw my reflection, not moving, not blinking, just staring back. Then it spoke, with my voice, but not my words. "You remember now." I couldn't respond. "You've always been here." I shook my head. "You wanted to forget, so we let you. You volunteered." My mouth felt dry. I forced a whisper. "Volunteered for what?" The reflection smiled. "To carry it, to keep it asleep, to walk, so it can dream." And suddenly I saw it, the full shape of the tunnel, not as concrete and wire, but as a living thing, a being, vast, dormant, and it required dreamers, walkers, carriers, people who gave themselves to the pattern, people like Elias, people like me. And I remembered the breakdown, the way I begged to disappear, the call that came offering solitude, anonymity, escape, the paperwork I signed without reading, the door I walked through. I hadn't been hired. I had been chosen, or maybe I had chosen it. The final test came quietly. The tunnel returned. Concrete, rust, flickering bulbs. The platform at the end, empty. The air was cold again. And at the far end, I saw her. Me, but still, eyes closed, standing as if asleep. And I knew I had to take her place. To complete the loop, to close the circle, one more version to carry the rhythm, one more dreamer to keep it sleeping. I walked up to her slowly. The air between us thickened like syrup. The hum of the tunnel lights grew louder, not as sound, but as pressure in my ears. When I reached her, she opened her eyes. And for the first time, I understood. She wasn't my reflection. She was what was left, a placeholder. And I was the one who had returned. We didn't speak. She simply stepped aside and disappeared into the wall, into the tunnel, into me. I took my place on the platform, closed my eyes, and the tunnel exhaled. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe hours, maybe weeks. The tunnel doesn't count time the way we do. The lights hum in intervals that have nothing to do with minutes. The air moves like tides on a schedule older than clocks. But eventually, I opened my eyes, and the tunnel was Still. No sound. No footsteps. No whispers. Only the soft hiss of distant rain somewhere far above, muffled, like it was raining on another world. My body didn't feel like mine anymore. It worked. I could move my fingers, flex my legs, breathe, but something had changed. The way you feel when you wake up from a dream and don't remember who you are yet. Like I had been emptied and slowly poured back into myself, but not all the way. Something was missing, or maybe something extra had come with me. I walked the tunnel again, from platform B to the end. The measurements no longer shifted. The path was straight, predictable. The walls held still. The shadows obeyed light again. But I didn't write anything down. I didn't need to. The logbook was gone anyway. So was the door behind the cabinet. And the other versions of me, the echo, the sleeper, the mimic, had all faded. Only I remained. Or maybe that's not quite true. On the 50th night, I saw someone new. A figure standing at the far end of Tunnel C. They looked unsure, flashlight trembling, steps uncertain, pausing at every flickering light. I recognized the fear. They were new, like I once was. And I understood. The tunnel wasn't done. Not with me. Not with any of us. It chooses, and it waits. We carry it. We walk. So it dreams. And when it stirs, we take our places again. To keep it calm. To keep it asleep. I never tried to leave after that. Not really. I walked the tunnel each night. I watched the lights. Listened to the patterns. Sometimes, I passed mirrors just for a second and saw her again. That other me, watching from the edge of glass, never moving, never blinking. Sometimes, I wonder if I'm the one who's frozen and she's the one walking. Sometimes, I wonder if this is the dream and the real world is what sleeps beneath. You might be wondering why I'm telling you all this. Maybe you found this recording. Maybe you're in Heron Hill now working some quiet job, drawn by the promise of isolation, of forgetting. Maybe the rain led you here. Maybe you heard something call your name, soft and slow, from the dark. Maybe the tunnel is already watching you. If that's true, I'm sorry. Truly. But maybe, just maybe, this is what you wanted. You wouldn't be here if you hadn't asked for silence. You wouldn't have stayed this long unless something inside you needed the quiet. And if you're lucky, you'll forget the sound of your own voice too. Because wherever you stand in Heron Hill, you cast two shadows. I came to Station Weatherdy 4 because I thought I needed silence. Not peace, not clarity, just the kind of silence that made everything else fade to gray. The kind of silence that doesn't ask questions, that lets you forget the sound of your own name. 3 months earlier, my sister had died. A car accident. The kind you see on late-night news recaps, sandwiched between weather updates and stock numbers. Nothing dramatic. Just a miscalculated turn in the rain. No one to blame. No one left to be angry at. Not even herself. And yet I couldn't let it go. We hadn't spoken in 2 years. Not since the last fight, stupid, sharp-edged things said over the phone in exhausted tones. I don't even remember what started it. Only how it ended. Me hanging up. Her never calling back. A gap that stretched and stretched until it became permanent. So when the opportunity came, a job posting buried in a federal contractor site, looking for someone to man an old coastal transmission tower for 6 months, I took it, without asking questions, without telling anyone. I signed the NDA, passed the background check, boarded a small boat, let the fog swallow me whole. Station Wotherdy 4 is built into the cliffs of a forgotten stretch of northeastern coastline, 3 hours by boat from the nearest town, and another hour's walk along a narrow, crumbling trail. The tower rises from the edge of a cliff like a rusted finger, flanked by thick pines that lean too far inward, as if trying to shield it from the sky. There's no cell service, no satellite, just the tower, a concrete block of a living quarter, and the ever-present sound of wind and distant water. The nearest person is likely 50 miles away, maybe more. The job was simple: monitor transmissions. The station is semi-automated now, they told me. All I had to do was check the signal logs daily, ensure the relay equipment didn't go offline, and report anomalies through a secured internal console. They never explained what kind of anomalies they expected. They just told me not to respond to anything I might hear. The implication lingered. The pay was decent, enough to buy time, which was all I really wanted. The station itself was utilitarian: 2 small rooms, one for sleeping, one for working, metal cot, fold-out desk, tiny galley kitchen. Rust stains crept along the floor tiles like veins. The signal room smelled of ozone and dust. Outside, the tower loomed, always humming. On my first night, I stood on the narrow balcony and watched the sea vanish into gray. The fog never lifted, not completely. Even when the rain stopped, the air held a strange thickness, like something unseen was still moving just beyond reach. The wind carried faint sounds, not voices, not exactly, but patterns, like something brushing the edges of speech, turning back before it fully formed. I told myself it was the wind in the pines, or the sea echoing off the cliffs. I started sleeping with the window cracked, just to hear it. Some nights, it almost felt like company. The first week passed without incident. I settled into routine. Wake up, brew strong, bitter coffee, run diagnostics on the signal feed, file reports, sweep the stairwell, read in silence, eat canned soup, sleep. The quiet was thick, but not oppressive. It felt earned. But then, on the 8th day, something changed. I woke to the console beeping. A single red light blinking steadily on the panel marked Receiver Channel B. That channel had been offline since I arrived, deprecated, according to the manual. Nothing was supposed to come through it. I tapped the keyboard. Static poured through the speakers, dry and uneven, like wind across gravel. Then, something else. A faint rhythm buried in the hiss, like Morse code, except slower, less structured. I turned the volume down, saved the log, reported it with a shrug. The response came hours later, through the internal system. Do not interpret. Log only. Channel B is not interactive. Do not attempt to replicate or triangulate source. It struck me as odd the way they emphasized not interactive, like they were afraid I might talk back. I didn't. Not then. Instead, I printed the waveform, pinned it to the wall, watched it for patterns in the silence between tasks. 2 nights later, it happened again. The signal came at 3:14 a.m. clearer this time. No words. Just something beneath the static. A low hum that shifted in tone like breath through a throat that wasn't quite human. I didn't report that part. Instead, I lay in my bunk, eyes open, listening as the wind outside grew still and something else began to move in its place. The fog pressed against the window like a weight, and from the tower, I heard a metal groan, slow and heavy, as if the structure itself were turning towards something I couldn't see. I should have been afraid, but I wasn't, because in that moment, for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone, and that scared me more than anything. The next time the signal came through Channel B, I didn't log it. Not officially. I sat in the dark signal room, rain tapping lightly on the roof, and let it play. It wasn't just static anymore. Beneath the hiss, I could hear rhythm, not Morse, but something older. Slow pulses, rising and falling in uneven intervals, like a language spoken through breath. And layered just beneath that, something strange. A low, wet clicking, not mechanical, organic, like the sound a throat might make, trying to mimic the idea of a voice. I muted the console, sat back. The room felt too warm, the walls too close. When I opened the logbook, my hands shook not out of fear. Exactly. It was something closer to recognition, like I was remembering a sound I hadn't yet heard. I didn't mention any of this in the report. I just wrote, Channel B activated again. No anomalies detected. That was a lie. Because the anomalies weren't just in the signal anymore. They were in the tower. The stairs to the transmission array had always been a spiral rusted metal, groaning underfoot. But on the 11th day, I noticed something strange. The climb took longer. It wasn't obvious at first. Only when I reached the top did I check my watch. 14 minutes. It had never taken more than 6. I'd climbed it every morning since arriving. Same pace. Same boots. But something had shifted. The space inside the tower had stretched. I went back down, counted the steps. 103. The next day, 117. By the end of the week, 140. 2. Still the same height from outside. I stopped climbing after that. The fog got thicker around that time, no longer drifting in waves from the sea, but pressing inward, curling around the base of the station like it was trying to find a way inside. The pines near the cliff edge became harder to see. Then they vanished altogether. I looked out the window one morning, and the trees were gone. Not cut, not burned, just absent, like the fog had erased them. There were other things, too. Little things. The canned food in the galley began to rearrange itself. Labels facing forward one day, backward the next. The tea kettle began to whistle, even when I hadn't turned the burner on. And once, just once, I walked past the hallway mirror and didn't see my own reflection. The mirror showed the signal room, but I wasn't in it. Just the chair, spinning, slowly. I started keeping a second journal. One I didn't report. I hid it behind the vent grate in the sleeping quarters, just in case. The pages filled quickly, not with analysis, not thoughts. Mostly shapes, repeating curves, tight spirals, long vertical lines. like towers viewed from above. Some nights, I'd wake with the pen still in my hand, ink staining the sheets, symbols scribbled across my palms. I stopped opening the window after the 20th day, because one night I woke to breathing. Not mine, not human, just outside the glass. A slow, drawn inhale, then a pause, then something tapping, not on the window, on the inside wall, as if something had gotten in, but nothing ever was, not visibly. On day 22, the internal console displayed a message I hadn't typed. I had just finished checking the log entries, and the screen flickered for less than a second, and then a line of plain text appeared in the center. Keep listening. No source. No user ID. It wasn't a command. There was no threat. Just a suggestion. The words blinked twice, then vanished. I didn't report that either. I couldn't explain it, not even to myself. The house I lived in as a child had creaked at night. Pipes rattled. Old radiators hissed. But this was different. The station wasn't reacting. It was learning, watching, and worse, I felt like I was beginning to understand it. That's what scared me most. Not the fog, not the sounds, but the slow shift in myself, the part of me that no longer found it strange, the part that started waiting for it to speak again. It did. On day 27, just after 3:00 a.m., Channel B came alive without warning. No beep. Just sudden sound, louder, clearer, closer. No rhythm this time. Only words. 3 of them, spoken in my voice. Come upstairs now. Then silence. No static. No breath. Just quiet. I didn't move. I sat in the signal room for hours, not blinking, the screen still humming. The words burned into the back of my eyes. I told myself it was a hallucination, that I hadn't slept, that isolation does strange things. But the next morning, I found the stairwell door open. I hadn't opened it in over a week, and this time, the staircase only had 12 steps. I climbed the stairs. 12 steps. That was all. The metal felt too warm under my hands, too smooth, like it had been touched recently by something that didn't leave fingerprints. I expected to reach the tower's broadcast floor, but it wasn't there. Instead, I entered a room I had never seen before, and I should emphasize this. I had seen the tower's interior, every inch, blueprints, maintenance manuals, even crawl space maps. This room wasn't listed anywhere. It had no windows, no lights, but it glowed faintly from walls that pulsed like the inside of a shell held up to your ear. Soft, pinkish, breathing. There was a single chair in the middle. It faced a console, not the kind I use downstairs. Older, analog, rows of dials and switches, and a cracked screen built into the surface. There were no labels, no brand marks, just a strip of yellowed tape with a handwritten word in faded ink. Receive. I didn't sit, not right away. I stood there for a long time, listening. No sound. But I could feel something like heat from a flame just out of view. A presence, a direction. I stepped forward and placed one hand on the console. It responded instantly. The screen lit up not with interface or data, but with a face. Mine, but not live. Not a camera feed, just a still image. Gray, blurred, mouth open like I'd been caught mid-sentence. It flickered every few seconds, switching to other versions of me. One where I was asleep, one where I was smiling, one where I was looking directly at the screen. I turned away. The screen went black, and the moment I looked back, the image was gone. Just a prompt remained. Begin transmission. I left. I ran down the stairs 12 again, heart hammering, skin slick with cold sweat. But when I reached the bottom, I didn't find the signal room. I found the bunk room, as if the tower had folded in on itself. That night, I dreamed of wires beneath skin, thick cords running along the underside of my arms, coaxial lines where veins should be, a mouth that opened not to speak, but to broadcast nothing but static and light. I woke to find my nose bleeding, and the phrase, "begin transmission," scrawled across my bedsheet in my own handwriting. I checked the journal. Nothing. I checked the signal logs. All normal. Except Channel B was now active full-time. Siffinger Archicit. No fluctuations. No cutoff. And the hum behind it? It was starting to sound like breathing. By the 34th day, I stopped checking the transmission room. Not because I forgot, but because I didn't want to see what had changed. The fog never receded now. Even at noon, the world outside the station looked like wet gauze. The cliffs were gone. The sea was gone. The trees were gone. Only the tower remained. And the voice, it didn't speak often, but when it did, it used my voice, softly, calmly, like a thought I wasn't sure I'd had. Sometimes it gave instructions. Write it down. Listen closely. You're almost ready. And one time, she's almost here. I didn't know who she meant. Not then. But I started dreaming of my sister again. In the dreams, she stood at the bottom of the staircase in the tower, soaked from rain, silent. Her eyes weren't quite right. Too dark, too deep. She never spoke. Just looked up at me and opened her mouth. Inside wasn't a throat. It was a speaker grill, cracked, humming. And from it came the Channel B signal layered in static and sorrow. I woke sobbing. That's the night I found the third stairwell. It shouldn't have been there, tucked between the galley and the maintenance closet. Just a narrow, concrete stairwell spiraling down. It hadn't existed the day before. I stood at its mouth for over an hour, feeling warm air drift upward in slow pulses like breath, like invitation. I didn't go down, but I knew, somehow, I would soon. The final shift came on day 42. That morning, all the surfaces in the station walls, windows, mirror, steel had begun to reflect a second version of me, a heartbeat behind. I'd move, it would hesitate. I'd look, it would blink first. And that afternoon, when I entered the signal room, I found the reflection already seated, watching the screen. It didn't move when I entered. It didn't acknowledge me at all. Just sat there, fingers twitching in slow looping patterns. I turned off the lights, but it remained, illuminated by a glow that no longer came from this world. That night, I heard my sister's voice over Channel B. Clear, crisp, no static. Why didn't you answer when I called? I didn't speak. I couldn't. The signal paused. Then, I'm here now, but I'm not just me anymore. You don't have to be just you either. I know what's coming. The station doesn't want my body. It wants my pattern, my signal, my rhythm of thought and memory. It wants to add me, not erase me, just include me, just like it did her, just like it did the others. And I'm beginning to see the appeal, because here, in the fog, in the hum, in the silence between pulses, I'm never alone. I descended the stairwell on the 44th night. It wasn't a decision. It felt more like gravity, like my body understood something before my mind did, like the tower had changed the shape of thought itself, tilting every hallway toward a single inevitable descent. The stairwell was colder than it should have been. Not icy, but mechanical. The kind of cold that makes metal sweat. The kind of cold you feel in an old radio when it's still warm from transmitting, but no longer alive. There were no lights, yet everything was visible, not through illumination, but clarity, like the air itself was a lens. The walls were steel, not concrete, wired. They pulsed softly, with copper veins that disappeared into the dark below, humming with memory, not electricity, not energy. Memory. The deeper I went, the more I remembered. But they weren't my memories. At first, they seemed like dreams, unfamiliar places seen from behind glass. A fire tower in the Rockies, a substation deep in the Mojave, a research base near the Arctic Circle, always alone, always cold, always someone watching from behind the walls. Then, the memories turned personal. The day my sister and I built a blanket fort in the living room during a thunderstorm, her last voicemail, the sound of my own breath when I ignored it. But they didn't play like memories. They played like broadcasts, fragmented, looping, layered over one another in strange intervals. I wasn't remembering. I was being tuned. At the bottom of the stairwell, there was a door, not mechanical, organic. A membrane thin and pulsing like stretched skin, veined with circuitry that shimmered when I approached. It opened without touch, pulling inward as if inhaling. I stepped through, and into a room that could not exist. It was infinite, yet close. Walls too far away to touch, but sound reached instantly. The floor was black, reflective like standing on a pool of still ink. In the center stood the transmission array, not the one from upstairs. This one was alive. Towering wires that breathed, dials that pulsed, screens that blinked in unison like open eyes. And at its core, a seat, familiar, the same seat from the mirror, from my dreams, and already occupied by her, my sister, or what remained of her. She wasn't rotting. She wasn't ghostly. She was sharp, eyes brighter than I remembered, skin the same pale gray tone as the screen static. Her mouth moved before she spoke, like the delay on a bad recording. And when she spoke, the voice was perfect. Too perfect. You came. You always would. I couldn't speak. I tried, but no sound came. She stood, or rather she lifted, rising with unnatural smoothness. The tower or the thing beneath it spoke through her, not like a possession, but like a merging, like a system finishing an update. You were the strongest signal. Most ignore the call, you answered. Most resist the shaping. You aligned. You're not being haunted. You're being prepared. And then, this place isn't a station. It's a repeater. We gather voices. We collect memory. We send ourselves forward into whoever listens. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't a haunted outpost. This was a transmission point, not for communication, but for identity. The signal I'd been monitoring wasn't a warning. It was a casting net. Each tone, each whisper, each breath-laced wave was a thread meant to find minds sensitive enough to sink. And I had been sinking since day one. My sister stepped forward. I backed away, but the room didn't allow for that. The moment I moved, I found myself standing beside the core, as if motion no longer followed physics, but intent. "You're not alone anymore," she said, voice. And not voice blending in stereo. "You never were. You just hadn't tuned in." She gestured to the seat. The console in front of it flickered to life. It displayed my face. A live feed, eyes wide, mouth trembling, static dancing across the edges of the screen like snow. Then words appeared beneath the image. "Would you like to broadcast?" I don't know how long I stood there. Time as I understood, it didn't work here. It may have been seconds. It may have been hours. But in the end, I sat. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. Because it wasn't just about me. I felt them, the others. So many voices. Not screaming, not crying. Just broadcasting. Calmly, with purpose. Some were old, some I recognized, some I became. For a moment, felt their last breaths, their first thoughts, their quiet reflections, their echoes. And then I spoke, softly, into the receiver, not in words, but in pattern. And the tower listened. And then it replied, with me. I don't know when I left the seat, or if I ever did. The tower doesn't have hours anymore. Not days, just pulses. Everything is timed by the beat of something too large to see a long, slow rhythm beneath thought, beneath time. I move when it wants me to move. Speak when it speaks through me. Think in frequencies, not in words. But I remember this much. I stayed, not out of fear, not out of submission, out of something far quieter belonging. The seat wasn't a trap. It was a terminal. And I had been logging in since the day I arrived. The moment I heard the hum, that first faint click layered under static, the process had already begun. I was never supposed to leave, because leaving would mean breaking the transmission, interrupting the pattern, and that's not allowed. Not anymore. Now, the tower lives through me. My memories are sorted, compressed, streamed. I feel them looping out through walls, through wires, through fog, reaching others. The broken, the lonely, the sleepless ones lying in beds miles away, letting soft static fill their ears at 3 a.m. They think they're listening to nothing, but I am there. We are all there. Every voice that ever sat in this seat, every sister that vanished, every station that ever hummed alone in the snow. We're all speaking. Not words, not even messages, just presence, broadcasting our shape into the night, searching for minds tuned just right. You're listening, aren't you? You're wondering how this ends. If I escaped. If the fog cleared. If I was ever real. But I need you to understand something. This is not a story. This is a test pattern. A calibration. A subtle frequency designed to resonate with the lonely corners of your brain. The parts that ache in the silence. And now you've heard it. So maybe you're ready too. Maybe tonight, when the rain falls soft and the static turns a little clearer, you'll hear us again. Not with your ears, but with that deeper part of you, the one that's always been waiting. And if you do, if you feel something stir behind the glass of your screen, if your reflection blinks just a little too late, you'll know. The tower has found you, and it's already started listening back. I moved to Orvale because no one there knew my name. A village tucked into the spine of the eastern mountains, wrapped in pine and granite, and curled around a narrow, black lake. It wasn't on most maps. There were no billboards, no welcome signs. If you asked a dozen people in the next town over, half would say they'd never heard of it. The other half would go quiet. That's how I knew it was the right place. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be comforted. I didn't want to hear the words people say when they don't know what to do with someone's grief. After my sister died, all I wanted was for the world to forget me, and Orvale seemed to specialize in forgetting. I arrived in early autumn, right as the first rains settled over the valley like a shroud. The road into town narrowed into gravel, then became little more than 2 tracks cut into moss. The rental car struggled the last mile before giving up entirely. I left it near a leaning fence post and walked the rest of the way in with my duffel bag slung over my shoulder and the rain soft against my neck. The air was thick with mist and something else. Not rot, exactly, but the kind of wet, earthy weight that fills old root cellars and never quite leaves. Orvale revealed itself slowly. A cluster of steep-roofed cabins, one inn, a chapel with a bent steeple, no gas station, no stoplights, everything softened by the fog. No one greeted me, but the keys were waiting at the lodge. A note taped to the front counter, room 3, door sticks. The room was plain pine walls, wool blankets, a tiny stove that ticked all night like an old pocket watch. I unpacked nothing, just curled under the covers and listened to the rain, which never seemed to let up. It didn't fall. It hung, like something sighing just out of view. I slept for 13 hours. When I woke, it was still raining. I'd rented the room for a month. My plan, if you could call it that, was to walk, read, sit by the lake. I wasn't here to heal. I wasn't here to process. I just wanted the world to grow quiet enough that I could hear myself think again. And Orvale offered nothing but quiet. The villagers didn't speak unless spoken to. Even then, they answered slowly, like their words had to swim through syrup to reach me. They weren't rude, just distracted. Like something else was always pulling their attention sideways. The grocer, an old woman with clouded eyes, sold me bread, cheese, and tinned sardines. She asked no questions. A boy at the path's edge stared at me for a long time, then pointed to the lake and said, "You hear it yet?" When I asked what he meant, he ran. I began hiking the ridge trail each day. The rain made the stones slick, but the fog muffled my thoughts. The lake was always visible from the trail, a long, still stretch of black water that swallowed reflections. There were no birds near it. No wind touched its surface. I remember thinking it didn't look like water at all. It looked like an eye. I first heard the bell on my 5th night, just after midnight. A low, mournful chime that seemed to come from beneath the earth, or maybe beneath the lake itself. Not loud, not insistent, just patient, like it had been ringing for a very long time and was only now loud enough to reach me. I sat up in bed, heart slow, breath held. The sound faded. I asked the innkeeper about it the next morning. A man with a weathered beard and a voice like wet gravel. He didn't answer at first, just handed me a cup of weak tea and said, "You'll hear worse if you stay through the end of the month." That's when I learned Orville keeps no clocks. No one wears a watch. No bells ring in the chapel. There are no sirens, no hourly chimes, just the lake and the bell that no one talks about. I started writing again. Not much, just little impressions, bits of dream, scraps of memory. I filled a notebook slowly, my handwriting tighter and more angular than I remembered. Every time I tried to write about my sister, the ink smudged. Not immediately, but hours later, when I turned the page back, her name would be gone, just streaks of gray across the paper, like it had been washed away. By the rain, maybe. By the lake. I don't know why I stayed. Maybe I thought there was something here worth finding. Maybe I believed, foolishly, that being forgotten would hurt less than remembering. But the lake doesn't let you forget. Not really. It waits. And it watches. And sometimes, late at night when the rain quiets just enough, it rings. The bell rang again the following night. I was awake this time, sitting by the small window in my room, watching the fog roll in over the hills. The rain had softened to a mist. The air was thick and still. At first, I thought it was just thunder, but then I heard it clearer, deeper. A low, resonant chime that seemed to rise through the soles of my feet. I couldn't tell if it was close or impossibly far away, tolling from beneath the lake. 4 notes, each one slower than the last, each one sounding more like a voice than a bell. I asked the grocer again. This time she didn't pretend not to hear me. She just said, "We don't talk about the lake after rain." Then she smiled too wide and dropped 2 extra tins of fish into my basket without charge. Something about the sound stayed with me, not in my ears deeper than that. I began to hum it to myself without realizing, just low vibrations in my throat, like an echo I couldn't quite silence. I'd wake up with it on my lips, and I wasn't the only one. I saw a boy at the chapel steps tapping his fingers in a rhythm that matched the bell. A man stacking firewood outside the inn muttered something under his breath, a cadence I didn't recognize until later that night. When the bell rang again, same pattern, same 4 tones, only this time, I think it skipped the last one. The lake grew stranger. On still days, it shimmered as if wind were moving across it, even though the trees around it stood still. The surface occasionally dimpled, like something was exhaling beneath the water. I walked the shore daily. At first, the ground was soft and muddy. My boots left clear prints that filled slowly with black water. But over time, the mud firmed, then hardened. Then, one morning, I found no trace of my steps from the day before, as if the lake had rejected them. People spoke to me less as the days passed. At first, I assumed it was the usual small-town indifference, but now I think they were forgetting me. One morning, the innkeeper called me stranger again, even though we'd spoken every day for 2 weeks. The grocer double-checked my name when I paid as though hearing it for the first time, and the little boy by the chapel ran from me like he didn't recognize me. That was when I checked the guest book in the lodge foyer. My name wasn't there. I was sure I'd signed it when I arrived, but there was a gap, 4 blank lines, then a signature from 5 months ago. When I touched the page, the paper felt wet, but only to my fingers. I had a dream that night, the same one I'd had as a child, but warped. I was standing at the edge of the lake with my sister, only she wasn't my sister anymore. Her face was wrong, too long, her eyes full of reflected water, like deep black mirrors. She reached for me, her fingers dripping not with rain, but with something thicker like memory leaking from a wound. She whispered, "They always come back when it rings." I tried to leave the next morning. I packed my bag, paid my room, and began walking the road back to my car. Only it wasn't there. The fence post was. The bend in the trees was the same, but the road kept going and going. I walked for nearly 3 hours before I came to the village again from the opposite direction, like the road had looped, like the forest was holding me in place. The villagers didn't seem surprised to see me. One man even nodded and said, "First time doesn't usually last that long." Then he blinked, confused, and turned away before I could ask what he meant. I started marking the days. Scratches on the underside of my nightstand. Tally marks. After 10, I'd rest a day. But when I checked again the following morning, there were always only 5. Reset. Restarted. And on the 5th night, the bell would ring. 4 tones. Always the same. Until the 6th night when it rang 5. And I felt something shift in the floor beneath my bed. The rain no longer left puddles outside my window. It soaked the world, but left no trace. I watched drops hit the ground and disappear, soundless, like the water was being taken rather than absorbed, like the land didn't need it or didn't want to show it. I opened my notebook and found pages I hadn't written, passages about the lake's bottom, about ruins beneath the surface. A line etched in ink I didn't own. The bell is not a warning. It's a door. And another beneath it. They remember you, even when you forget. I started forgetting other things. Where I put my boots. What day it was. How many weeks I'd been here. When I checked my phone, not for a signal, just to orient myself, the screen was blank. Not black. Blank. And the reflection it cast in the glass didn't match my face. The mouth was smiling. That night, I stood on the shore until the fog closed in. The bell rang again. This time, not from beneath. It came from the woods behind me. A low chime. Then a second. Then silence, and I swear I heard someone say, softly, "You were never alone by the lake. I haven't slept in 2 nights. The rain is in the walls now, dripping even when the skies are clear. The sound follows me a rhythm, like breathing, not my own. The lake is full, too full, like it's about to spill, like something beneath it is rising, and with every chime of the bell, I feel it remembering me. I stopped counting the days after the 6th bell. It rang just before dawn, low, wet, and somehow closer than before. I'd stopped writing the sound down in my journal. There was no point. I could feel it in my bones now. The notes echoed in my teeth, in the backs of my eyes, humming even in silence. It didn't just sound from the lake. It sounded through me. I kept to the trails that day, but the mist was thicker than usual, milky, with strange currents in it, like the air was moving underwater. I could only see a few feet ahead. My breath fogged in front of me, then hung in place, not drifting, not dispersing. The lake wasn't visible from the ridge. That had never happened before. I climbed higher. Still nothing. Only the fog. Only the bell. That evening, I returned to the inn and found a package on my bed. No note. Wrapped in oilskin. Inside, a photograph. Black and white. Old. A group of villagers standing by the lake. I recognized the chapel, the tree line, even the crooked steeple in the background. But I didn't recognize the people, except in the back row to the right half turned, partly obscured by a taller man in a wide-brimmed hat, a woman stood. Her face was mine, older, maybe, worn, eyes more tired than mine had been, but unmistakable. Me. I took the photo to the innkeeper. He stared at it without blinking, then said, "It keeps those who listen too closely," and walked away. That night, I heard scratching. Not mice, not branches. Inside the walls, deliberate, slow, like nails tracing a name. I lay still. The bell rang once, and the scratching stopped. But when I sat up and looked to the window, I saw something pressed against the glass. Not a face, just the suggestion of one fogged breath, fingertips, an outline of something watching from the inside out. The dreams changed. No longer memories twisted by grief. Now I saw places I'd never been, halls beneath the water, lined with windows that opened into black, rooms built of wet stone and pulsing moss, people walking through the lake like air, eyes pale, mouths full of water. I was among them. I was always among them. Sometimes I led them. One morning, I walked the path to the shore and found a bell, a small one, tarnished bronze, half buried in silt, attached to a black ribbon. The moment I touched it, I remembered something. I'd been here before, not just once. More than that, and always after a loss, always after forgetting something too painful to carry. The lake offered forgetting, but it remembered in your place. The villagers no longer made eye contact. Some turned away when I passed. One old woman muttered a prayer when I brushed her shoulder by accident. I tried to leave again, retrace the road. Packed what little I had, even left before sunrise. but the road ended where the water began. A sheer cliff now, where once had been trees, the forest gone, swallowed, and on the wind, a voice I recognized. You already left once. Why are you still here? I stopped eating. The food tasted like brine. Even dry bread had a saltwater aftertaste. My reflection began to ripple. In glass, in spoons, in puddles, never still, and never alone. Always a shape just behind my shoulder, like someone treading water, waiting to be seen. On the 33rd morning, I found her, my sister, standing by the lake, wearing the same raincoat she was buried in, hair soaked, face pale, eyes impossibly dark. She didn't speak, but I heard her voice anyway. In the bell that rang behind my ribs. You gave me to it once. Why won't you let go this time? I ran, but the lake followed. It was in every shadow, every breath. It whispered from the trees in voices that sounded like mine. It hummed in the rocks. It watched from the reflections in window glass. And then the rain stopped. For the first time since I arrived, the silence was worse. No birds, no wind, no footsteps but mine. And from beneath the lake, something surfaced, not breaking the water, but pressing against it, stretching it like a membrane. A shape, tall, thin, wearing a crown of bells. I collapsed in the chapel. It smelled like rot and rusted nails. The pews were warped with damp. On the altar, someone had written in charcoal, "To be remembered here is to be kept." And beside it, the bell is not the first sound. It is the last. I dreamt that I drowned, but it wasn't a nightmare. It was returning, slipping into warm darkness, the feeling of weight lifting. And beneath the surface, arms caught me gently, not to pull me down, but to hold me still, to keep me from breaking the surface again. When I woke, I was soaked, my bed dry, my boots dry, but my skin soaked. My hands smelled like lakeweed and old copper. There was dirt beneath my nails, and my mouth tasted like memory. The fourth bell rang at dawn. No rain, no wind, just that slow, wet chime rolling through the fog, heavy and inevitable. This time, it didn't fade. It just kept ringing slow, rhythmic, as if the lake had stopped echoing and started breathing. I knew where it was coming from now. Not below, not around, inside. I didn't bother packing. I just walked, past the chapel, past the inn, down to the edge of the water, where the fog clung like gauze to every branch and stone. The path was different now, wider, cleared. Pine needles swept clean, as if something had made way for me. The lake was mirror flat. No birds, no ripples, no reflection. And at the shoreline, I found her again, my sister, standing knee-deep in the water, pale hands at her sides, hair wet and tangled with lakeweed. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't afraid. Her voice wasn't hers. It came from the bell deep, resonant, filling the space between my thoughts. You left me once. Then you forgot you did. I shook my head. No, I whispered. You died in the hospital. The bell rang again, and I saw it, how it really happened. Not a hospital, not even a bed. She had stood here, on this same shore, years ago, crying, and I had turned away. Walked back into town, told myself I couldn't help her, told myself she was already gone. The lake had taken her, not killed, taken, the way it takes everything too heavy to carry. Grief, memory, names. It doesn't drown you. It holds you, keeps you unremembered, until the bell rings again. I stepped forward. The water was warm, deeper than it looked the moment I moved. I sank to my knees, then waist. No resistance, only welcome. She reached for me, and I took her hand. Suddenly, we were beneath the lake, not swimming, standing, like the water had been replaced with glass or time. Around us, structures, stone arches, collapsed stairs, carved figures, weathered by centuries of silence. A city, dead, sunken, sleeping, and at its center, the bell, massive, suspended between two root-covered columns, made of something too dark to be metal. It pulsed with every toll, not with sound, but memory. And from its surface, names, endless names, carved deep, including mine. You came here to forget, she said, but forgetting doesn't make it not yours. You left, but it kept your shape, and now it's ready to use it again. I backed away, but the lake held my feet like hands. I turned and saw myself walking the shore. Newer, brighter, a version of me from before the grief, before the forgetting. They didn't look back. They just followed the path into town, and the villagers welcomed them, smiled, nodded, as if they'd been waiting for this version. The bell rang a final time, and I remembered everything. My sister's voice, begging me to stay. My own fear, too heavy to bear. The way I told myself I hadn't heard her clearly. The way the lake made it so easy not to remember. The bell rang again, but it didn't chime. It spoke. We keep what you won't. We remember what you erase. You are the shape we show to others, so they can forget too. You are the bell. Now, I opened my eyes. I was back in my room, dry, cold. The journal was open, pages blank, only one line, centered in perfect script. You are the last toll. It hasn't rained in 3 days, but everything is still wet. The walls sweat. The windows drip. My breath hangs in the air like fog. The lake isn't outside anymore. It's everywhere. I don't leave the room much. No one knocks. No one calls my name, not that they remember it. The innkeeper passes by my door some mornings, whistling that same slow 4-note tune the bell used to ring. I think he was here once, like me, a long time ago. The mirror above the sink no longer shows my face. It shows the lake, always from above, always with the same figure walking its edge. Sometimes the figure is me. Sometimes it's someone I've never seen, a child, an old woman, a man with a cane. But the fog always follows them, and the bell always rings, even if they pretend they can't hear it. I've tried writing again, but the ink turns to water before I finish a sentence. Only one page ever holds its shape, the last one in my journal, where the words are already written. You came to forget, but forgetting has a cost. The lake keeps everything, even you. I stand at the shore often now, not to leave, not anymore, just to listen. The water is always still, always waiting. When I speak, it listens. When I cry, it reflects me. And when I fall silent, it answers. Soft waves, a breath against the stones, a memory I'd almost lost. She comes sometimes, my sister, not a ghost, not even a dream, just herself, as she was, smiling, whole, but I can't reach her now. She's deeper than I am, further into the forgetting. But sometimes she looks up, and I see peace in her eyes. I'm not afraid anymore, because I understand now. The lake doesn't punish. It doesn't steal. It simply remembers what we throw away. It holds it for us until we're ready to know again. And if we never are, that's all right. It will keep it anyway. I am not the first. I will not be the last. I've seen others arrive quiet, broken people, just like I was. They sit on the benches by the chapel. They trace their names into fogged windows. They flinch when the bell rings. And I want to tell them, it's okay. You'll forget soon, too. But I never speak, because it's not my place to warn them.